2. East Hampton Town Board, we are live, being streamed and recorded.
Thank you, LTD. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the East Hampton Town Board work session for Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. Carol, if you could please read the roll call.
Councilmember Flight?
Present.
Councilmember Lease?
Present.
Councilmember Rogers?
Present.
Councilmember Calder-Piedmont?
Present.
Supervisor Burke Gonzalez?
Present. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Am I too ahead? Okay, let's go back. Yeah.
Speed pledge.
Okay.
I apologize.
So we start today's meeting with public portion. We ask you to please kindly keep your comments to 3 minutes. And then we have a number of topics on today. We're going to start with a topic that we added yesterday morning, and that's a fire safety update. And we'll hear from members of staff on that. We're going to do a community housing fund funding request for 109 Hampton Street, Sag Harbor. That's going to be followed by 3 presentations of 2024 accomplishments and 2025 goals. That's from the Natural Resources Department, Land Acquisition and Management, and Aquaculture. And that's followed by the 2025 proposed CPF Management and Stewardship Plan. Then we'll have a presentation on the New York State Department of State Coastal Resiliency Grant, and that'll be followed by the proposed thunder lightning policy at town parks. Then we'll have liaison reports and resolutions. So we're going to start with public portion. Carol, I don't know if you've got anyone signed up. Okay, so we're going to go for a show of hands. Is there anyone that would like to address the board? Sir? You have to come to the podium, and if you could please state your name for the record. This way, we can capture it on tape. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jay Lippin. I'm one of the residents of 109 Hampton Street, and I've lived here and out here for about 8 years. I've lived in 109 Hampton Street for about 6 years, so I'm here for support of the purchase of 109 Hampton Street. I live out here year-round. I volunteer at ARF in East Hampton as well. I work as a chef in food advocacy for local farmers, helping them take their excess produce and making shelf-stable products, making it more sustainable for them to be out here and support the local economy. One of the things, as what I do, and a lot of the people that live out here year-round, affordable housing is very important. We are the backbone of the community, and we really need to be able to live out here. If rents get raised and there's less places for people to live, we're going to have to leave and go somewhere else. We love it out here. We love the community, and we love being out here. So, please support this.
Great. Thank you, Jay.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else that would like to? Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Supervisor and councilmen, councilwomen. Thomas Gardella is my name. I live on 42 Hempstead Street, which also happens to be in Sag Harbor Village, also in East Hampton Town. I'm also the mayor of Sag Harbor Village, and I wanted to rise in support of the purchase of 109 Hampton Street. As you heard from my previous constituent, it's important to us. Affordable housing is a big part of what we're working on, and this shows that, if we show real leadership, if we put these funds where they need to go, that we can be successful and we can preserve housing for people like Mr. Lippman and those in our community, especially our emergency services people who, as you know, the trend is slowly decreasing for volunteers and people that can live in the community and volunteer. And something like this would definitely help. It's a first step. It's a model that I've been speaking of in the village to preserve housing where it exists and where it's historic houses that need to be somewhat refurbished. The town can come in and support the village. So I just wanted to say thank you and support this purchase.
Thank you, Mayor. Would anyone else like to address the board? Please. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi. I have a residual of a cold, so excuse me. My name is Gary Gallagher. I'm the owner of, I and my two children are the owners of 82 Holes of Water Road. It's one of the property, it's adjoining on the, I believe it's the westerly side of the proposed property to be purchased at 86 Two Holes of Water for affordable housing. I have some questions about the proposed development. I understand it's in the early stages of analysis. I don't know if this is the appropriate venue for that. If not, I'd appreciate it if I was directed to whom or whom I should speak to. But the one question I have is, has the town at this point come up with the density of what's proposed for that property? I've heard and read about a wide range, anywhere from 5 to 60 units with the treatment plant. The property is in a water recharge overlay district, subject to clearing limits, as you all know. And there is no public water to that property. So I want to understand how the town or what analysis has been given to weighing the environmental impact relative to the opportunity to develop affordable housing. That's it.
But if you could leave your contact information, your phone number and email with the clerk,
Certainly.
one of us will get back to you.
Okay.
and connect
Like I say, I don't know if that's the venue for this now, but that's one of my questions, concerns.
Absolutely. We understand.
That's it.
Thank you. Jeannie?
Hi, my name is Jean Kane. I'm a trustee in Sag Harbor. I also live on the East Hampton side in East Hampton Town at 325 Division Street. I just really want to thank all the members of the Community Housing Authority, the Community Housing Advisory Board, as well as all of you for looking at this opportunity, because we do know that historically there were many more multi-unit homes that took care of a lot of Sag Harbor families. And in the last, it's probably 20 years as we've seen this decrease, that these homes were purchased and then turned into single family housing. And so when a house like this goes on the market, the fact that all of your different parts work together so smoothly and in a very quick pace, because we're competing with public buyers, and that you understood not only were you saving a multifamily home, and I know formal public hearings have to have, and it's not done yet, but just I really want to thank everyone for the effort and the work that's been done to date, and we very much appreciate this in the village, because opportunities like this don't come up very often, and so I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? Jason, is there anyone on the line?
Yes, we have callers. Give me one caller. Give me a second.
Thank you.
Hello, caller ending 9004. You're on the air.
Good morning. This is Gloria Frazee, East Hampton. I'm on the East Hampton Sustainability Committee, but I'm speaking in my capacity as Rewild Long Island, giving a huge shout out to unsung heroes who are presenting today: Kim Shaw, Barley Dunn, and Scott Wilson, along with their teams, Emily, Megan, and the crew. They work so amazingly with the high school kids, and that's not in the deck for today, but they do a lot of work with the town, with local organizations like Rewild, and just a huge thumbs up to them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gloria.
And that's it.
Okay, I'm going to, one more time. Anyone else would like to address the board? All right, we're going to move on to topics. So the first is a fire safety update, and we Addressing us today will be Member Tom Flight, Senior Environmental Analyst Andy Drake, John Wernett from the New York State DEC Supervising Forester, and our Chief Fire Marshal David Brown. First, I just want to take a moment to thank our local firefighters and first responders who assisted in the West Hampton Beach fire. Their dedication and bravery never goes unnoticed, and we are grateful for their service. Like many of you, I spent the weekend watching the coverage on Channel 12, and it was a tense and difficult situation. But when I heard County Executive Ed Romaine say that they had the resources they needed to fight this fire, that was quite reassuring. But still, it's a reminder how we need to stay prepared. That's why on Monday morning, I brought together our officials from our police department, fire marshal's office, emergency preparedness team, and land acquisition and management to assess our fire risks and discuss ways to strengthen our prevention efforts. East Hampton has been proactive for years, clearing hazardous trees, improving emergency access, and working closely with our local fire departments and environmental experts. But fire safety is a shared responsibility, and today is about keeping this conversation open and answering your questions. I want to thank Councilmember Tom Flight for his leadership on this issue. Tom has been deeply involved in these efforts, and I know he'll have important insights to share. So with that, I turn it over to Tom.
Thank you very much, Madam Supervisor. So just to give an overview of what we'll be talking about today, I'll give a quick overview of just the overall emergency preparedness system and some of the background there. We'll then move on, Andy and John will talk about what actually happened in West Hampton, just to make sure you guys have the right information. I'll kind of then give a quick update of how we're managing the wildfire risk across the town. And then we'll do an update on management of specific town-owned properties. So there is a delineation there. There's properties in the town and there's properties owned by the town. John and Andy will go over and give a quick overview of the current condition of the town-owned properties. And then I'll do some discussion on how we're working with the East Hampton Town Fire Departments and looking at infrastructure. And then we'll end with the fire marshal talking about managing risk on your property. So to kick off here, emergency preparedness, we face many risks living out here. We do have the Suffolk County Hazard Mitigation Plan, which all the towns on the East End are part of. And in there, we list the primary risks we face as a community. These include coastal erosion, disease outbreak, earthquakes, expansive soils, extreme temperatures, flood, groundwater, hurricanes, infestation and invasive species, nor'easters, severe storms, shallow ground warning, flooding, and wildfire. Now, if you just think about that list for a second, there's quite a few of those we've experienced in the last decade. So management of emergency risk is something we are on the entire time. Different risks occur at different times, and we have to put focus into them. And a lot of this is about how do we prepare for them. So, the first thing I want to say is I want to echo the supervisor's comments and thank our emergency services that we had 90 mutual aid fire departments come to manage that fire in West Hampton is phenomenal. It's why living in Suffolk County is such a benefit to so many people, because we care about our communities. So the emergency response system, I think the first thing, to do here is education. I mean, there's a lot of people who kind of understand how the system works when you have an emergency like that, but not fully. So, whenever you see an emergency, 911 is the activation of the emergency system. And, that will go through to the police department dispatch, and the relevant resources will be dispatched by the town according to that. Now, as those come on scene, there will be the ICS, the Incident Command System, and depending on the nature of the incident, a fire chief or a police chief or the emergency management coordinator will take control of that scene. The scene will be assessed, and then as needed, additional resources will be called in. The first thing happens that mutual aid from surrounding districts will come in. If they cannot manage the incident with those resources, then we reach out to the county and we reach out to the state. And that's exactly what happened in the West Hampton incident recently, and it's why we have these resources. It doesn't necessarily make sense for the town or the hamlets to have these resources in their own fire districts. We have to pool these resources to be efficient with taxpayers' money. The second important piece here is understanding for the public where to go for the correct information. So the town has its own resources. We have an excellent public information officer, Patrick Dorenzi, who puts out regular updates on our town social media. The police chief, Mike Sarlo, is also excellent at keeping people updated on the town's police Facebook webpage. We then have the town website where if anything is an immediate impending emergency, we'll have headers across the town website advising people. And additionally, we have a civic alert system where if there are issues going on in specific geographies within the town, we have the ability to text people across different areas to ensure they're getting the right information. Some of the questions we've had in this kind of realm relating to the recent issue is, what happens in an evacuation system? And, obviously it varies with the nature of the event we're facing. And, as the event evolves, that information will be shared with the public accordingly. But, our primary kind of focus on most emergencies out here, given our geography and the nature of the events we face, is a shelter-in-place program. And it's important for residents to understand that. There's a great deal of information on the town website about what that means and what sort of resources and responsibilities you have a resident to ensure for your safety. Planning for your medications, ensuring your cell phone's charged. Do you have a plan for your pets? Do you have a call list of people who you're going to contact? These are really important considerations you have to take into account as residents to, ensure your safety. With that, I'm going to hand over to Andy and John now, and if they could just give a quick overview of what happened in West Hampton, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Welcome, Andy and John.
How's it going? Good morning, Supervisor, members of the town board. Again, for those that don't know the public, my name is Andy Drake. I work for the Department of Land Management of the town, and I brought along my friend and colleague, John Wernett, forester from the New York State DEC, Division of Forest Health. In terms of going over what has happened in West Hampton, I'm going to kick it to John to go through that, as he's a little bit more of an expert on fire management and forest management than myself.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. Thank you for having me. It's a little early to tell the exact determination of the fire. I'm sure everyone saw the supposedly s'mores started it. But in the coming days, we will figure that out. But as of right now, I believe the fire was approximately 450 acres, burning some state land and some county lands. But we're very thankful for all the mutual aid and the fire departments to put it out so quickly. It could have been much more catastrophic. But it's important to note that that ecosystem is fire dependent, and it was coming up on the 30-year anniversary of the 95 wildfires, and that is typically what the fire regimen is. It's around 25 to 30 years that it burns, and it looks catastrophic, but that is what that ecosystem evolved with. And in a few months, it'll green up, and in the coming years, you'll almost not even know that it happens. So it's scary, but that's part of the living in the Pine Barrens.
So, John, if I may,
Sure.
because the original reporting was that southern pine beetle infestation was part of the fuel.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So that area, the pine beetle typically attacks trees, that are much larger. We have not had an outbreak in the dwarf pine, that area. So pine beetle did not add to the fire risk in that situation. But in other situations, what drives fire is the fine fuels. So it's the little needles, the huckleberry, that's what drives the fire. These large dead standing trees, slash on the ground and such really doesn't drive the fire. In fact, when a fire hits that, it stops because we call those, there's 1 hour, 10 hour, 1,000-hour fuels. So it means like it takes 1 hour to change the fuel moisture and such. So like grass is the 1 hour fuel, the small twigs are 1 hour fuels. The big standing dead or the slash piles and such, 1,000-hour fuels. So it'll hit that and just smolder. It won't burn. So it doesn't really add too much to the fire risk.
So that's something I think we need to promote, because I know for most folks, the inquiries we're getting is that's what their biggest
Right, of
concern is,
course.
that
course.
Right, areas where we've managed southern pine beetle in the
Want
town.
to get closer to the
Oh, sorry.
microphone, Andy?
Yeah, areas where we've managed southern pine beetle in the town, although these properties may look aesthetically unpleasant and maybe scary and may present concerns for dangerous situations or hazardous conditions. It is nice to know, and I feel reassured, knowing that these. The piles on the ground would rather stop a fire rather than add fuel to the fire in a lot of ways. I'll get into the current state of our forest lands and our town-owned preserves, but that was always a secondary goal, looking forward, rather than leaving dead standing trees while managing for southern pine beetle suppression. We're also putting the material on the ground to further degrade and break down. So although these lands were not specifically managed at the time, I'm talking 2017 to 2021 for fire risk, I think it was a secondary outcome of managing for suppression. So I'm happy to hear John echo that today.
So, yeah, I mean, just in terms of the wildfire risk across the town, I mean, some areas are more obvious than others. You look at Napeague as you drive across and the dead pine there, and obviously that is huge risk. That's on state land. And for those of you who weren't able to attend, the New York State did an excellent presentation on February 13th, which you can get a copy of, which just kind of really went over what their management plan is for that area, the clearings they've done adjacent to houses, and what the plan is going forward for that. Obviously, there's risk elsewhere on the town. And so, when we're looking at that, we're looking at town lands, we're looking at county lands and other state lands that are in different areas. And, as we see risk there, we work with those municipalities organized. And I also want to kind of just pause here and just say how grateful we are as a town to have both Andys, Andy Drake and Andy Gates, who are trained arborists who, since this incident really kicked off in 2017, were out in the woods cutting trees and really fighting this head on. And it's a real benefit to have them in there. In terms of town-owned properties, so the way we've addressed this is twofold. The first is to actually look at where is the fire load concern, and that's associated with dead pine and other stuff. And Andy in the land management department's been very proactive in getting into our properties and kind of looking and assessing that. The second part of it is what is the infrastructure we have in order to kind of combat those fires. So, and what risk does the fire pose to potential infrastructure? So any wildfire assessment looks at resources, and that's, it's the balance of risk versus reward. So what are the resources that are at risk from the fire? So in terms of what we're looking at in this area, we're looking at, okay, what are the adjacent houses? So we're working with our GIS team to put together a mailing list to discuss with people, things like management of property on their land, which Dave will come into a little bit more. We're also looking at, where are the locations of the nearest public water fire hydrants, because that's something that our fire crews need in order to effectively manage this. I'll talk to that a little bit more as we get into working with the fire departments. But for now, Andy, if you want to just go through, managing the existing properties we have, the historic actions we've taken, and then I'll jump back into the fire departments.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Historically, it all begins, like I said, the worry and the concern about our town properties and the current state stems from southern pine beetle management, I think. And the first southern pine beetle in East Hampton town was discovered in 2017 by myself and Andy Gates at the Curtis Preserve on Swamp Road. At that time, we knew quite a bit about southern pine beetle based on research forums we attended at Brookhaven National Lab and just research we had done on our own, knowing that it was in Wertheim National Wildlife Refuge in 2014, and then crept further west into Connecticut State Park and Red Creek Park in Hampton Bays. So we knew the telltale signs. We anticipated this happening, but we quickly worked with GIS to map the perimeter of the infestation and put it on a map. We returned to the property 1 week later, and it had more than doubled in size in 1 week. So at that point, it was considered an outbreak status, and it was moving very quickly. So our department called to meet with the town board and the supervisor, Larry Cantwell at the time, to just go over the state of things and what was happening in the woods, and knowing that a large loss of forest land was about to occur. Supervisor Cantwell declared a state of emergency in October of 2017. And that was because southern pine beetle don't care whose property it is where, they're infesting trees. They're getting into trees. So we have a lot of town and county co-owned property in that area on Swamp Road, but right across the street is all private lots. And so to declare a state of emergency kind of allowed us to with landowner permission, hire tree crews to fell these trees and attack and manage for suppression on not only town land but private land as well. Since 2017, our records show that 22,725, give or take, pitch pine trees have been felled for the purpose of suppression. And we use the method known as cut and leave. This was advised by the DEC at the time, who we are so grateful for their assistance at that time. They came out and essentially taught us forestry. John was out there with a chainsaw on his back, hiking through the Curtis Preserve, putting trees on the ground. And the whole division of forest health, Nate, Molly, the whole crew coming out to help us with this situation at that time was very, very beneficial, and we learned a lot from them. Honestly, during that time, we were really hopeful that we could stop the spread of southern pine beetle because it was so new to our town. We were really hopeful we could stop the spread to points east, such as Napeague and Montauk. That was kind of like the final frontier we were trying to hold on to and maintain that healthy forest land. But unfortunately, in 2021, Andy and I were driving down the highway and noticed a patch of brown trees in Napeague State Park, and sure enough, we walked the perimeter and found about 200 to 300 trees infested, and quickly notified the state on that issue. Aesthetically, I'd say forests looked better at that time, but again, I was happy to hear John explain that the forests now, our town preserve lands now after management, are actually perhaps healthier at this time than they were previous to infestation because of just an overstocked woodlands that are very susceptible to infestation and to actually fire risk more so. Years later, the slash piles have been degrading. New growth of pines have been coming up, not only pitch pines, but white pines as well. And that's occurring naturally as the sun is now hitting the ground level, and also because of plantings that we did through our own department, and also volunteers getting them involved. We had students. We had the Surfrider Foundation coming out to plant white pines and pitch pines. We did cone collection events with East Hampton Trails Preservation Society, and we've done. I think we planted over 2,000 trees in the Northwest Woods area just to repopulate our pine forests in the years 2019, 2020. It's unfortunate that that goal of stopping the spread further east, southern pine beetle, the battle kind of became a losing battle. We've kind of focused our efforts after that point to managing hazard trees adjacent to private properties, felling trees that have the potential to fall on private landowners' fences or homes or yards, or so. Our department have gone through and walked perimeters of all of our town preserves, and we feel pretty confident that we've managed all standing hazard trees that threatened our neighbors. That's kind of where we're at. We had basically a shift in management philosophy from suppression to hazard management, and now here we are talking about fire risk and possibly further management of hazards, possibly along trails and elsewhere. But that's where we're at currently.
Thank you, Andy. So Andy, myself, and John have spent significant time in the differently affected areas, and it's been great actually having John there too, because his experience across the East Coast in managing forests associated with wildfires is more extensive than pretty much anyone I've ever come across. So his advice has been incredibly valuable. But we've also had the fire departments in there with us and just understanding what their needs are. And that's critically important too, because, you know, we have our brush trucks, but they have specific dimensions. So if we're going to do clearings or fire breaks, we have to understand, okay, what sort of parameters do you need in order to get your trucks and your equipment in and out of here? You know, additional conversations are kind of, what sort of resources do you have and what sort of resources do you not have that you might need? So, you know, one thing that we saw when we were fighting the fire in Heather Hills a few years ago was, you know, getting public water supply in there is not possible. So the use of trash pumps to actually have an adequate water supply into the affected areas is key. So, you know, encouraging the districts to have that number of trash pumps is key, obviously, too. But then there's bigger pieces of equipment that, you know, they say would be incredibly helpful that we don't have, things like bulldozers. So if you go back to that Heather Hills example, we're incredibly fortunate in that case that we had Mr. DeSuno, who's since passed, who came in and actually opened up the pathway for the firefighting teams to get in there. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, you're right. Yes, sorry, Danny Shield. You know, but it doesn't make fiscal sense for fire districts or the town to have their own bulldozers because these instances are so rare. So understanding how can we get those resources? I have begun discussions with Legislative and Welker to kind of understand, is there possibilities to work with FRES that they have some of this equipment that can be called out?
I don't know if you say what FRES is.
Oh, sorry, FRES is the Suffolk County Fire and Rescue Emergency Services Organization, and they support all the towns across Suffolk County with management of fire and emergency systems. It's a fantastic organization, you know, and when we face risks like these or any emergency, they are, you know, one of the first people our emergency coordinator will reach out to for additional resources. So, you know, that dialogue with the fire departments is critical. You know, one thing that's come back that we'll be working on next is, you know, ensuring access in there, because the fire department's key feedback to this is, look, from our perspective, there's two things that we have primary concern. One is speed of access. You know, the sooner we can get onto these fires to put them out, the better. And then second, obviously, is the safety of the firefighters. We don't want to send anybody into areas where their lives are at risk. This has to be done in a professional manner. And that's critically important too, because that takes time. I understand that a lot of people kind of have concerns, having seen what's happened in LA and also what recently happened in West Hampton. But understand from what we've talked about today that our risk is very different based on the vegetation, based on the geography. That is not to say there is no risk. We are actively managing it, but it's a very different and I would say lower risk in that sense. But, you know, as we build these plans for how to address it, we're looking to do it in a way that takes into account all the critical aspects. You know, our woodland is a resource to the town. It's one of the reasons people come out here. It's also habitat for our amazing ecosystem. You know, just tearing it down is something we have to be very careful about doing. It sets precedent and also destroys habitat. You know, it also costs money. And look, you know, all these emergencies we face, that there is a fiscal element to them, and it's management of that risk with those resources is key. And we've got to do this in the right way. It takes time, and we're doing that working with the relevant partners. With that, I'm going to, actually one more thing just to talk about quickly is water infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, I want to just take a break for a second to see if board members have questions.
Yeah, sure.
For Andy and John.
Yeah, I have quickly just, it's less of a question than I just want to explain to the folks some of the acronyms like GIS mapping, which is an incredible tool that we have. If you could just let folks know what that is. We tend to say these acronyms because we deal with them all the time.
Global information systems. Yeah. Right? Yeah, global information systems.
So really what it is.
Yeah, we're working with the IT department, which is Bob Mason and Barnaby Friedman. If we're you know doing any kind of land planning from our department, we look to them to help us put it on a map, essentially. So GIS and IT, their department.
We can be quite specific with our mapping. So Tom was talking about mapping out hydrants and things like that. So we can pick that up from a system we already have and put it on a map.
Correct.
And understand it quite quickly. I just wanted folks to know what that was.
There's different layers we can.
And also, I know the use of drone technology and using drones has, in the last number of years, has really become an essential feature. And I know all your department, Natural Resources, use drones quite a lot to help you have eyes on everything as well.
Oh, yeah.
So I want folks to know that if they saw drones over the forest, it's you guys.
It's not just land acquisition and management, it's also the East Hampton Town Police Department. They're using drones as well. You want to?
Yeah. Most importantly, not only are they using drones, as well as the fire department too in East Hampton Village, they have thermal drones. And in terms of fighting wildfires, that is unbelievably helpful. The one that East Hampton Fire Department has is the most up to date. It's also capable of talking to people as they're on the ground, should they need to. But in terms of actually managing the risk, being able to get the drones up there is key. The other piece, just to quickly talk about before I hand over to David, is just, goes back to infrastructure. When we're mapping this with our geographic information systems and looking where the hydrants are, we can see that there's a vast area where we don't have public water and we don't have public fire hydrants. So, we've reached out to Suffolk County Water Authority to understand, what is the plan to increase the water supply there. They have been doing that in absolute fairness to them over the last few years, adding hydrants across the town. But, obviously, the more we have there, the more we're able to manage this risk. So we're looking to.
And we've actually outreached to Suffolk County Water Authority and asked them to come to a town board work session to give us an overview of what their plans are.
Chief, yeah. Before kicking to Buzzy, Dave Brown, John, did you have anything else to say on the current conditions of our town lands, our town-owned preserves before we move on?
Sure. So Long Island, just like most areas of the state, has been lived in for hundreds of years. And it's important to note that many of these trees are reaching, the end of their lifetimes. So we're going to see a lot of these, if we don't manage the forest, nature will. So we're going to see outbreaks of insects, disease, fire, of course. So that's important to note that we're on the edge of decline in general. And the reason why we have these outbreaks is because there's very little management being done versus upstate where we have logging, active forest management, that when these events do occur, it's more catastrophic than areas that we do management in. And it's just important to note that unfortunately, these events are probably going to become more common in the coming decades.
And how does drought affect that? I mean, drought's another factor.
Right, and drought just exacerbates everything. So the trees are already weakened; they're competing with each other for resources. So then, when you add drought in, the southern pine beetle just makes it even worse because the trees are already stressed. And then when we have drought, increased fire risk, increased beetle risk. So it just it exacerbates everything.
And does the DEC have any best practices for managing wooded property on private properties as well? Because that's also while clearing and keeping the rural character of our neighborhoods is important, it's also would probably be good to educate people on their own good management of their properties. And it's interesting to hear you say, I have a lot of wood, mostly woods on my properties, natural woods. I don't do anything to it. But I never thought of felling dead trees as a best practice.
Yeah, and of course you have to, I myself lived in the Pine Barrens as well, so there are clearing limits and such like that, but there's a great program called Firewise. And it's advises, as zones of protection for your home. So you can do certain things, clear your gutters, make sure you don't have vegetation touching your house. So when there is a wildfire, you lower your risks of your own home. But Firewise is a great resource.
Thank you for that.
It's a great segue to our Chief Fire Marshal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You gentlemen.
All right. Thank you. Good morning. My name is David Brown, Chief Fire Marshal. They stole a little bit of my information. But, great tips. I'm going to talk about, the home safety, home fire safety, and preparing for exteriors. I'm not going to talk about the interior. I guess we first start with your homes. The way our homes are designed, the materials we use to build the houses. If you're thinking ahead of fire prevention, we can think of terracotta, slate, or metal roofs. Fire and embers land on these beautiful cedar shingles that we love to have in our traditional homes. But that's what I use my fireplace for tinder, is the cedar shingles. So these houses are going to be more likely to go up. Going to the sides of the houses also, cementatious shingles or more of the fireproof shingles that we can use, again, are going to prevent the fires from encroaching on our homes. We're talking about exposure. We're not talking about the fire from in the house, it's the exposure outside towards the house. So again, talking about the brush up against.
Pardon me, sir. Could you move that microphone to point up towards you? Thank you.
There we go. All right,
Awesome.
so
Thank you.
Good. Okay. So we're talking about the brush and our shrubbery that we put around the houses. We want to be more strategic, keep them further away from the houses. We don't want them right up against our house, and we want to make sure that they're well watered. We don't want dry and more likely to combust and cause fires. Then we're going to go out to the outer lane. As we go, we talk about felling some of the standing trees, some of the standing dead trees. Once they're on the ground, again, they'll absorb moisture. They're going to be a slower fire. They're going to be more of a smoldering fire rather than a quick moving fire towards your house. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the duff and litter. The duff is what you see is all the packed down leaves and everything. We're not going to disturb that too much, but the litter on top, if it's starting to get too much branches and stuff and like that, that's what we want to clean up, a little bit of the branches, so those things are coming, the fire doesn't spread across the ground quickly coming towards the house. Trim some of your trees up so that the canopy isn't all the way down to the ground. Again, it's going to be harder for the fire to jump up into the canopy if it's trimmed up a little bit higher. Another very important thing that we're finding right now, and it's been brought up by the fire departments, is driveways and access getting into our homes. We love these beautiful winding dirt roads and dirt driveways through the trees and the woods to our beautiful homes. But the fire trucks, the mandates are not getting any less. The fire trucks are getting bigger, they're getting wider, they're getting longer, and they're getting harder to get into these driveways. The code says that they have to be a minimum of 12 feet wide and clear to 13 and a half feet high. The fire trucks now, they're getting out to about 8.5 feet wide with another foot on each side for mirrors, and we're out to 10 feet wide. So take a look at your driveways at home when you're driving in. Could I get a big truck in there? How about an ambulance? That's more likely you're going to need an ambulance somewhere along the line. You might not need a fire truck, but you might need an ambulance. And they're just as wide, and it's just as hard for them to get in some of these driveways. The grading of the driveways, if there's ruts and potholes and big mud puddles, it's going to be, again, harder for these emergency service vehicles to get into your driveways. So start thinking about yourselves, think about yourselves, be greedy, get myself clear, get a nice clear pathway into my home, my driveways. You may want to have to stop into natural resources or planning once in a while and make sure you're not over clearing. Fire marshals, we like overclearing because there's less firewood, but I get myself in trouble there. But check and make sure you're not going to be overclearing and hit any of those limits.
Yeah, if you have questions about clearing, the Natural Resources Department, Mark Aberson, is available via email. And just generally, if you have questions, we have created a town email, firesafety@ehamptonny.gov, and we will forward that to Rutland Department to get those questions answered for you.
And I'll just give a shout out to native plantings, which require less watering, are more hardy because they are actually native to the area and less susceptible to diseases, et cetera. They'll thrive better and cost you less in irrigation as well.
Nice, absolutely.
Buzzy, could you also just address gates?
Gates, yes, okay. Oh, this is another one. Gates against private driveways, due to some of the codes we have, some driveways don't require a permit as it is right now. And the problem we're finding is that people, if they're building them without the permit, they're not necessarily going through the planning process or the process of review to make sure that they are wide enough or they are far enough back onto the property and they're not too close to the road, because when you get an ambulance that pulls up and the gate is only 3 or 4 feet off the road, they're sticking out into the road and you're putting them in danger. And again, you're slowing them down, you're hindering them getting into your properties. Again, think of yourselves. Mind everybody else, think of yourselves. How am I getting into my property? How are they getting to me? And then it all falls in line. Everybody we'll be better off for that. But right now, the code is 12-foot wide, again, for the gates, and the clearing is 13.5 feet high.
And Buzzy, what about the codes? Like, because when we had our meeting yesterday, one of the town staff is in the East Hampton Fire Department. He said he's had to climb fences in order to get into the to the property.
Again, I think that's where the ones that we're getting that don't need a permit. So that's where we need to address it in the code, because they're putting them in without permits. They don't put in the safety features that we require typically, like to get into a gate. If it's electric gate, we can require a Knox box key, just like a Knox box to get into your homes when you have an alarm system. It's the same exact key at your gate. The fire department chiefs are the only ones that have these keys. They put it in, it opens your gate. There's also another method, which is a siren method, where the gate activates on a siren. Police or fire department, ambulance come up and hit the siren for a certain amount of time, 2 to 3 minutes, whatever it is, and that decibel, and it will open the gates. And then there's a third method of another Knox box key, where if the gates are locked with a Knox key, the fire department and everything could open that gate key also with that. So when it goes through the permitting process, we review all this stuff and we catch all this stuff. We make sure it's safe, rather than, again, the firemen showing up and having to jump over a fence or climb over a fence to get in to find out if there is a fire, or if it's EMS to get in to help you. And every minute, every second is precious.
And then you just want to talk about the burn ban?
The burn ban, yes. Statewide burn ban, no open burning, no burn, your outdoor burning pits, no outdoor chimney fires or anything like that. I'd even say, keep your fireplaces to a minimum too. Make sure you're not using, too much papers that can cause embers, or too dry a wood that can cause the embers to come up. Make sure your spark arresters and your caps are on your chimneys. Again, maintenance, home maintenance, make sure fire prevention, all that.
I'm just going to throw in beach fires too, Buzzy.
Beach fires, no open pits, no open fires at all. Your grills, you can still use your home grill, but again, not anything with the open wood or open fires, open flames. Any questions?
That caps it off for the update.
Yeah, so we're going to be putting out a press release this afternoon when Patrick gets back to the office.
Thanks, Mary.
And we're really grateful for everyone making the time this morning to be able to be here. But we've also want to hear from our community. As we work to strengthen brush fire prevention and response efforts, we invite residents to share their concerns, ask questions, and provide input on fire safety in our community. We're going to be hosting officials and fire safety experts at town public work sessions. We've reached out to the Suffolk County Water Authority. We've reached out to FRES to see if they could come and to address this. And we're also setting up a special email, firesafety@ehamptonny.gov, and we're asking folks to send in their questions. Your input is essential. What we'll do is we'll bring these questions to town board work sessions and discuss them. It'll help us create an FAQ, and so this way we can protect our homes, our woodlands, and our neighborhoods from the threat of these brush fires.
Can I just mention?
Sure.
Just to mention also getting out information or looking for the information and getting it out on how to sign up for our alert system.
Yes.
I signed up for it years ago, way before I was sitting in the seat, and it's always been a valuable tool for a mass communication on what's going on.
Right. So you can get a text or an email, whichever you prefer, and you can do that on our town website.
Madam Supervisor, could I get an update on NEPEG and some of the states
Sure.
on NEPEG? As we're aware, the southern pine beetle has devastated the NEPEG, state meadows, parklands, and those areas also then too. Working with Governor Hochul's office, Chip Corman from New York State Parks, and Tim Watson, who is the park master, not master, maybe the regional park director for Montauk State Parks, and the DEC actually owns and operates Barcelona Neck. Specifically in NEPEG right now, they have an open contract out out right now to create burn piles. This is part of the protocol plan that they put together out there at the last public meeting, which you can get that information on the state's DEC's website, and we can provide it also. That is an open contract that is out right now. They had an on-site meeting to create burn piles. They'll be going out to another contract that will create a burn plan and hire a burn boss for a potential prescriptive burn that would be happening in the fall of 25 into the winter of 26. So those are efforts on the state's lands that we currently see. They're also working with the local fire departments and the town board, town council, and the supervisor also. But that's where they're at right now as far as getting the contracts out. Those contracts are millions of dollars worth of contracts, unlike what they're doing any other place in the state. Governor Hochul's office is completely committed to assisting the town of East Hampton by reducing fire risk in the state parklands in East Hampton.
I would just kind of say something to commend my colleagues here, which is that it's because they were ahead of the game in recognizing this that the state is where it is with NAPIG. Other areas haven't got to this level yet. So I think that's been effective management. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Tom. And what we're in the press release, we're including the link to YouTube so that folks can see the meeting, February 13th, I believe it was, when the state came out here to Montauk Downs and did a presentation on their plans for NAPIG. So there'll be a link there if you care to watch that video.
And just add on one more, I apologize, it's pertinent. The recent contracts that the state's done, they've reduced the fire ladder. So that contract's been complete right now where they reduced the fire ladder fuel that's into the Nepi State Meadows and also by Cranberry Hole Road right now. These next steps will take a little bit of time on there. But yes, you will see foresters felling trees in those areas upcoming weeks and months. Then I will continue to alert the board on that when I work with Tom. Yeah.
Andy, would you mind coming up again? Because I do know that some folks have said, they've heard about the plans that the DEC has for NAPIG and looking to do a controlled burn and why that isn't an option for us.
Well, I think when considering the management option of a controlled burn, in our area that was affected by southern pine beetle and most of our woodlands of the Northwest Woods, there's just such a fragmented ownership of land. We only own some smaller pieces in relatively to the larger swath of land of NAPIG State Park, where that's being considered. For instance, our largest preserve on Route 114 is Edwards Hole Preserve, which is approximately 50 acres, 52 acres. There's some other smaller preserves at about 10 acres, 15 acres. So there's too many. There's a conglomerate of different ownerships from private or reserve areas or county land. It's just, I'd say that's probably the biggest hurdle.
Size too, right? I mean, it's a smaller area, so the risk, yeah. Just the last thing I want to do here is a plug. So many of you in your hamlets see signs for sign up for your local fire department and EMS. These are the people out there fighting these fires. They need you. We heard earlier that it's challenging keeping the numbers up in the fire departments. I get it's a commitment. I do it myself. I encourage all of you to do it. I have people who are 84 running EMS calls with me, or on ladders or running pumps. Age is no barrier, gender is no barrier. It's something about living in your community. It makes a real difference, and they need you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All right. Well, thank you, Andy, John, Buzzy. We really appreciate you being here, and Tom for taking the lead on this. Okay, so now we're up to our second topic, and that's the Community Housing Fund request for 109 Hampton Street in Sag Harbor. And today we have Joanne Pilgrim, our Community Development Program Analyst, to take us through the presentation. So Emery, if you could get the presentation up.
Yeah.
I love this.
Good morning, everyone. So we're going to go through an overview of the proposed acquisition of 109 Hampton Street in Sag Harbor by the East Hampton Housing Authority with the help of a grant from the Town of East Hampton Community Housing Fund and financial assistance also from the Sag Harbor Community Housing Trust. Thank you. This is a picture of the building itself. 109 Hampton Street. It was brought to the town of East Hampton as a possible affordable housing opportunity by the Sag Harbor Village trustees. It's a 4-unit multiple residence building, legally pre-existing, as you know, occupied by tenants. It's one of the contributing historic properties to the Sag Harbor Village Historic District, built in 1890, and basically serves as a de facto affordable workforce housing. It's for sale on the open market with an accepted offer of $2.65 million. And if purchased privately, it would likely become a single-family residence that would not act as affordable housing. The next slide shows the location and site information. It's in a half-acre residential zone on 0.29 acres. That's 12,790 square feet. It's served by public water and the Suffolk County Water Authority. It has an individual septic system that is at this point an antiquated style of system. There are no protected natural features. It's not within a flood hazard zone. It is located along Hampton Street, which is 114, so that's a major road. And it's within about 1,500 feet of the Sag Harbor Business District and about 500 feet of the Sag Harbor schools. So the town of East Hampton received a funding request from the East Hampton Housing Authority for a grant of $1.5 million from the Community Housing Fund to help with the acquisition price of the property. That the East Hampton Housing Authority would take care of any needed repairs or upgrades or other expenses. We don't anticipate that there would be a further need for any more town funding, as the rent revenues would support the project going forward. The East Hampton Housing Authority has already retained a right to purchase the property through an agreement with the owner, with a forthcoming deadline to act. And the idea was that the Housing Authority would put down 10% of the purchase price, or $265,000 at closing, with a commitment of future funding. The Housing Authority would also receive funding from the Sag Harbor Community Housing Trust, which is committed to give $1.2 million toward the acquisition. That funding would come partially from another property that the Housing Authority is purchasing from the Sag Harbor Community Housing Trust with the help of a Community Housing Fund grant. It's called the Cottages on Route 114. That's another affordable housing that would be preserved in perpetuity through that action. And then the Sag Harbor Community Housing Trust would also commit an additional $700,000 toward the purchase. This request was reviewed by the town's Community Housing Advisory Board at their meeting on January 9th. Those present, barring one person who had to recuse because they were otherwise involved in the situation, voted unanimously to recommend that to approve this grant and expenditure. They cited various items to support that decision. One is that this serves as workforce housing and could serve people at up to 130% area median income, which is a demographic for which there is often kind of a gap in housing. Some of the other affordable housing projects can't serve people with that much income. The funding is readily available. The Community Housing Fund has the funds available, and we felt, the committee felt that the request does not significantly limit the potential funding of other future projects. The location within close to the Sag Harbor Village Business District was considered an optimal location for workforce housing. It would also preserve the historic home. And the committee also looked at the cost per unit of the investment by the town, which essentially factors out to $375,000 per unit. In considering projects to fund, the Community Housing Board has kind of used a rule of thumb of how much it costs to build units, affordable housing units, of $500,000 per unit based on recent projects. So this investment per unit by the town did not exceed that amount. The CHAB, as we call them, Community Housing Advisory Board, the CHAB issued a letter to the town board in January supporting this proposal. Considerations that our office would like to bring up are that there be no changes to the exterior because it's a historic property. There's no rezoning or similar changes required. This has been 4 units. There's no expansion since it's certificate of occupancy. There's no expansion proposed. This is, as I've said, the opportunity to preserve de facto affordable housing and a historic structure in Sag Harbor. And it would be the first use of Community Housing Fund money in Sag Harbor, which is a contributing area to the fund. And the Office of Housing and Community Development recommends a couple of conditions of the grant award, including that the sanitary system be upgraded to a low nitrogen system. That system could also, the cost for that system could also be potentially eligible for the town septic rebate program or the CPF water quality improvement grants that are available for that, for those types of systems. We would also recommend that all 4 units be reserved for moderate income families, which would mean incomes of up to 130% of area median income. That figure is tied to an annual calculation, which presently is for one person, $142,220. For 2 people, $162,500. And I'll just jump to a 4-person family. That moderate income would be $203,60. We also would recommend that the units remain affordable and be rented at prices that don't exceed our affordable rent thresholds. For studio apartment right now, that's $2,402. For a 1-bedroom, that's $2,913. And for a 2-bedroom, that's $3,362. So the property would be both owned and managed by the East Hampton Housing Authority and maintained by the Housing Authority, which I think, as we're all aware of, they have extensive, more than 40 years of experience in owning and operating and maintaining housing developments in East Hampton Town. And the last slide goes over the next steps. So the town board should discuss whether or not it supports the $1.5 million grant request at this time. If so, the town board should discuss any special conditions or requirements, and then would go ahead and schedule a public hearing at a forthcoming town board meeting, vote on the funding award, and at that point, if approved, the town attorney's office would prepare the resolutions and any other documentation to memorialize the town's commitment to and conditions for the funding.
Great, thank you, Joy. Joy, do you know offhand, are they all 1-bedrooms, the 4 units?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's 1 2-bedroom and 3 1-bedroom.
Okay, thank you. Ian, you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Joanne, and thank you to Eric Shantz, the Director of Housing, and thank you to Tom Gardella and Jean Kane for bringing this to us. It's obviously a unique opportunity in that it's such a historic building that's acting as a de facto affordable housing development, and there are concerns with something like this, which is upkeep, because it's obviously maintaining a historic structure is going to be a little more complicated than, a new, simpler structure, but we don't want to lose affordable housing that we currently have. As everybody knows, it's something that we need in town, but can also be controversial when there are new developments. And so I think this is a good opportunity to preserve something that exists. And, I know Jay. I didn't know Jay lived there. But that's, it always makes me happy because this is something that I believed in to begin with. But then when you hear the type of people and what they contribute to our community, who they're providing housing for, I can't say that I'm surprised, but just it confirms, I think, the goodness of this opportunity. So I'm definitely supportive, and I also want to recognize East Hampton Housing Authority, and that having somebody like that who's willing to step in, commit to the maintenance and the upgrades that are needed, and preserving in perpetuity gives me more confidence in the project. We talked about a number of ways to approach this, and their willingness to participate certainly is a cornerstone of, I think, hopefully a successful endeavor here. I agree with all of the conditions that were outlined. I mean, certainly if we use community housing funds money, we have to restrict the income and the rent that can be charged, because that's the whole point. We're never going to play around with that. There are standards here that we've all agreed to, and I've on the record, recognize the need for even income above that. But to be clear, if we're using community housing funds, we're going to stay within those standards. And that's, a concrete rule. So yeah, I'm supportive. I do want to just, highlight a couple of other things to be aware of. One thing that I've learned in talking with Chab and looking at affordable housing issues is that the CHF money, the Community Housing Fund's money, aren't going to go as far as we might think. And so we do have to be considerate about sort of cost per unit, which Joanne addressed in the the presentation here. And this is a little bit on the higher end, but I don't know of any other affordable housing project in Sag Harbor that we have. I think it's important that we address this need throughout all areas of the town. So I'm supportive. I just want to sort of highlight that. And frankly, I've had conversations with Andrew Garvey from Community Housing Advisory Board, who's quickly realizing how, we're blessed by these funds, but they are limited. And so we're going to have to use care. But I think this unique opportunity of preserving an existing affordable housing or de facto affordable housing development, the historic structure, the fact that it's one of the first ones in Sag Harbor, that you're bringing some of your own money to the table, and that the East Hampton Housing Authority is willing to step in, makes it a very good project and one that I wholeheartedly support.
So I agree with everything that Ian has said, and I thank all the work that's gone into this from our office in the Housing Authority. I can't think of anything more important than providing housing affordability, as Tom talked about, losing volunteers, losing the backbone of our communities through lack of housing affordability in the private sector. It's all the more important that we preserve any ability to have affordable housing. We pursue it. And also interesting that this is a multi-residence property, so we're preserving a use that would likely disappear, where it would become one family versus the ability to house so many folks that contribute to our town. So I'm fully supportive.
I like how this is full circle. Community housing, Sag Harbor Community Housing Trust, actually, the cottages were purchased with funds, I believe, that came from the Bolivar Watch Case Factory, which is outside and the cottages are outside the village of Sag Harbor. Now that funding finally has come back to provide affordable housing within the village of Sag Harbor. I think that's something that's missed on this thing too, and I like the karma, the full circle aspect of it. Joanne, nice to see you. Thank you for bringing this forward. And to the mayor, Tom, trustees, your dedication and commitment to the village of Sag Harbor and looking immediately forward to affordable housing is what puts you at the top. And your constituents in the village should be very happy to have you there then too. Because from our first meetings on there, you put the stamp that you wanted to make sure Sag Harbor was not just affordable, but affordable and attainable to have this. So I look forward to that commitment. I know you're committed to it, and I'm committed to this project also. And to the Housing Authority, thank you for being a great partner on this project then too. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll just echo my colleagues' comments. I think this is a great project. The fact it actually has the history preservation element as well, I think is fantastic. And Housing Authority, you continue to do an amazing job. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible collaboration. Village trustees brought it to us, the town, the Sag Harbor Community Housing Trust, the East Hampton Housing Authority. So I just want to go over some dates. So we're looking to schedule the public hearing at our meeting on Thursday, March 20th, for a public hearing on April 3rd. And then we would have the ability to vote on that actually back here in Montauk on April 8th, because I know that there's, Katie, I don't know what the date is, what you're looking at, but what I'm hoping, Carol, is if we, vote on this on April 8th and we decide to move forward, we can also get a special warrant so that on the April 20th meeting, April 17th meeting, we could have it on the warrant so that the funds will be available for the closing, if all goes according to plan. All right, so we're going to wrap this one up, and thank you for joining us today and being a part of the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so next up, we're doing our 2024 accomplishments and 2025 goals for our departments that work with the environment. We've got natural resources. Kim Shaw is going to be presenting as our Environmental Protection Director. That'll be followed by Scott Wilson for Land Acquisition and Management, our Director of that department. And then we will have John Barley Dunn, our Director of Agriculture, give his accomplishments and goals. So welcome, Kim.
Yeah, that's not me.
Oh. Sorry.
That's right.
Should be the first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's all right.
Okay. Next page, please. Here we go.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So the Natural Resources Department mission statement is to protect and restore the natural environment through sustainable practices and promote healthy ecosystems. We are committed to reestablishing native vegetation, ensuring clean and accessible water, and advancing the use of clean energy, as well as safeguarding our endangered species. Some of those photos on there just sort of highlighted all of our mission statement. So to go through some 2024 accomplishments, I obviously didn't list them all. I just picked a few key areas. The Renewable Energy Roadmap Plan. The key elements of that are renewable energy integration, energy efficiency, and fossil fuel reduction. Some of the core concepts of the plan include adopting a CCA, which is a community choice aggregation program that allows local governments to purchase electricity on behalf of the residents, offering an alternative to traditional owned utilities. One goal of that CCA is to pay less for renewable energy, potentially leading to greater local control of your energy choices. Another program that we're working with is Just Transition. It's a NYSERDA program. We're so happy to collaborate on a lot of our large-scale projects with NYSERDA. Just for everyone's knowledge, NYSERDA is New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, and we've had a great partnership with them. Our Just Transition program is looking at the National Grid property on 3 Cove Hollow Road. There's a antiquated peaker plant there, diesel fuel, and we're looking to come up with a beneficial reuse plan for that site. And so the team that we're working with was selected by NYSERDA, their TRC out of New York City, and they're developing recommendations, well, they already have developed draft recommendations for reuse of that site. Some of those recommendations may require a code change. This site is also home of the battery storage unit, so we're hoping to keep the newer components and just transition with the peaker plant. Another program that we're working with NYSERDA is the Build Ready, and this is a collaboration where the state is looking for large-scale vacant parcels to develop large-scale solar installations. It's been very successful in upstate New York where they have large commercial properties. What they're allowing the town to do is blend several properties to make a package appealing to people that may potentially bid on maintaining and installing the solar. So a couple of the sites we looked at are former brush dumps in Montauk and in East Hampton. We're also looking at Town Hall campus to do a large-scale installation there. One of the downsides of this program is our aging infrastructure, and it's whether or not we can have enough megawatts on any one of those properties to be able to transmit through town. So there are some complications, but it's still moving forward, and we'll have a presentation with the findings to the town board. Another really great project that we worked on last year was a CPF water quality project, and that was at South Lake. Everyone knows South Lake Beach. I lifeguarded there many moons ago, but it's been closed since 2005 with poor water quality. We are, with CPF monies, looking to target areas. So we had some residential properties just east of that, upgrade to an innovative alternative. We had a restaurant just west of it, upgrade. And then we looked at doing something on our own property. So one of the things we wanted to accomplish was controlling stormwater. We had a very large parking area that just drained directly down into the beach. So we did some bioswales, a lot of native vegetation planting. We upgraded the sanitary system and installed pervious pavers in the parking lot. It looks really great. There's a little picnic area down there, and I think it's a nice little retreat now. If we could just, we're still focusing on improving water quality overall in that area, and we've got some great ideas on the back that we're going to introduce in this year. Moving forward, we're hoping to develop a nitrogen smart communities plan. We are going to be presenting to the town board and outlining that. The first step is to do a resolution committed to funding a plan. And Melissa is going to be working on that in the next couple months, just before she leaves town to have a baby. We are also getting ready to roll out our coastal resiliency website. We finished up late last year with our developer. She also developed a website for Nantucket, and it's so user-friendly. It's for public education outreach, news about coastal resiliency, and just general information. It's going to be a great tool, we think, moving forward. The pictures, the videos, everything is stunning on there. It's really easy to read. We took a lot of the CART plan and put it in layman's terms in there so everyone can look things up, and we have references back to the CART plan. I think it's a great website. And then moving forward with CPF water quality, we're going to be incorporating some of the changes that were adopted late last year, which allows CPF water quality monies to roll over, which is significant. And it allows us to do projects, I think, on protected lands as long as it's subsurface. Two big projects that we're rolling out in this year is the Cove Hollow constructed wetland in East Hampton Village and the 27 rest stop in Wainscott. The 27 Rest Stop project is a collaboration with the state and Peconic Land Trust, and we're doing a rain garden bioswale on Peconic Land Trust properties, which is the gateway into East Hampton. Really going to clean that up. We're going to make a more formal boat, public access, public access to the water, and we're just going to beautify that area in general, control that stormwater using some green infrastructure and some pretty innovative technologies that our team came up with. So we're really looking forward to that. I think we are pretty close to putting that out to bid. The state wanted some assurances about ownership and construction details, and we're working on that. The next slide is just some statistics. We have a very robust endangered species program. We are hiring 2 new interns, so we'll have 4 people on board, 2 days a week, 2 different teams covering the ocean and bay beaches. Every year we try and implement something new into the program. This year we've had cameras. We've had a bunch of different opportunities to look at protecting the birds, and the cameras are great. It's unfortunate that we see some predation in them, but it's been really helpful. This year we're going to be doing some trying to outsmart the crows. They're really, really smart, and they can figure out where the nests are by following where the team goes on the beach, so they notice when they stop. So
you're going to have trouble outsmarting crows, I'm telling you.
No. But our flagging used to be blue with every nest, and now we're switching that up to pink. We're going to be doing some decoy nests. We've gotten some eggs that we've ordered. We've got some model plovers that we got from Audubon, and we're going to set that up and see if maybe that can help. But what a robust team that is. They're really excited to get out in the field. They're probably going to start just in the beginning of April. I've got 2 young interns that are graduating. One's going to start part-time in April, and they'll both be on board in June. So it's exciting. Re-veg compliance, unfortunately, the numbers just keep going up. You know, it's just crazy. And now with the new policy in place that a new C of O has to be issued upon property transfer, we're seeing more and more applications. And I think 2025 is going to be one of those banner years, unfortunately. It's just so many properties have either overcleared their properties or cleared into an easement, and they can't move forward with the closing until they resolve some of those issues. Fees for that, we've increased. They're now $550 for a full re-veg plan and $225 for additional inspections. That doesn't seem to curtail any of these issues, and the price of native plants just keeps going up. So we're really going to ratchet up on a public education outreach program this year. We're going to team with CCOM to do everything from innovative alternative septics to native vegetation to water quality. So we've had a couple preliminary meetings, and we're going to kick it off with a couple neighborhoods, community groups throughout the town. And then water quality. This program is really kicked off. Since the program started in 2018, we've had 780 installations. We have thousands of applications, but not everybody's installed. Last year, we had 165 new installations, and that's not counting all the applications. So oftentimes, people aren't ready for that commitment, and we offer them an extension. So we have a lot of people getting ready to install this year. We also have the 2024 grant awards. We had 7 projects last year totaling $1.3 million. And I forgot to mention that the CPF incentive program, or the rebate program for the innovative alternatives, was just over $2.8 million. We typically budget about $3.5 million, so we're a little shy this year, but based on the number of applications we've had in the past, that's how we figure out the budget. So we did the same thing for 2025. And that's about it. If you guys have any questions.
Thank you, Kim, first of all. I do have questions. South Lake Montauk and just Lake Montauk in general. I mean, the water quality in Lake Montauk is not the best. And I'm really happy that we've got the South Lake Montauk project going, because I hope that will see some improvements. Are there any other projects that we could look into to kind of mitigate that water quality kind of degradation? I mean, even the flushing, I know when we've worked with the feds previously, kind of clearing the channels has been great, but I've also had residents reach out to me like, why not clear it further down to increase the water flow into the lake and actually clean it that way? It's something that is deteriorating. Just interesting to hear kind of plans or initiatives that might be in the works.
So it is difficult. I know the Federal Navigation Channel only goes to basically the Calico property. We petitioned the feds in the past to extend it. I don't know if you remember, years ago, some of the marinas wanted to bring in larger vessels, and the only way to do that was to widen and extend the channel further south, and that just really never went anywhere. One of the problems with circulation, everyone assumes that bring in more water and it will circulate. There's a powerful freshwater head there that prevents a lot of circulation, so that's why there's so many problems at South Lake, because of all the freshwater inputs, mainly from the ditch.
And does that come in ditch?
Yeah. So we are embarking on a living shoreline, and we're planning to do that in one portion of it in the lake. So I'm going to be working with Barley on that. I think that's a great opportunity. Our engineers are just finalizing some of the drawings. Samantha Klein is working with our grantor to make sure that they're okay with the new locations that we've selected. And our second area that we're going to be doing in living shoreline is in Fort Pond off of Industrial Road. And that's incorporating some resiliency, removing some invasive species in the area, and then shoring up that area with green infrastructure. So.
And the water quality testing that goes on, those locations, do we do it ourselves, or does that come through CCOM typically, the water quality testing?
So I believe Surfrider does it for CCOM.
Okay.
They are this year upping their program. They're doing a quality control program, or a QAP. And once a QAP is in place, other agencies will then be more confident in the findings and that all the samples were properly handled. So in the past, the state and the county really never recognized that the samples were properly secured as they should be, and then processed in a certified lab. So they are stepping up. They're looking to either find a lab or develop their own lab. So they've got a lot of plans. We spoke briefly a couple weeks ago, but yeah, we're going to be working with them on their revised water quality monitoring plan. The county also does it, but they grab at like the headwaters, so we're not really getting a picture of what's going on the inside of the water bodies. And like I mentioned, we're going to be working with CCOM and really targeting Fort Pond residents and the lake residents to get maybe like a cluster of people together to sign a pledge that they're for clean water, and maybe work with contractors to see if we can get a discounted deal if we get X amount of people to participate in the program. So we've got a lot of good ideas coming up for 2025 to get out there with public education outreach. So CCOM has some new staff that's really wants to really hit the ground running this year and really get more installations on Fort Pond and Lake Montauk, because a lot of the IAs are going in 3 Mile, Hog Creek area, and I think it's because the Homeowners Association really encourage at every meeting for the homeowners to get involved and to get the county rebate. I mean, the county, state, and town. People, we've been doing this since 2018, and a lot of people don't know what kind of money's out there. So,
I heard a statistic the other day that about approximately 20% of properties around Fort Pond actually have the updated septic systems. Does that sound about right to you?
Well, we've had a lot of commercial come in, so that's good. Which one just came in? E&E. They're doing a large scale system.
And Harvest we approved last year too. Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
One more input that we're doing in Lake Montauk will come up probably to the board in April would be the West Lake boat ramp.
Right.
Yes.
That's another
Oh, yeah.
project that we're going to look to see, bring to the board and potentially install somewhere, hopefully maybe early 2026 also. So that's another level of a large input that we'll bring to the board very shortly too.
Yes, and we just got our final report on the Lowenstein Surfside drainage pipes, and Melissa and I are going over that. We'll fine tune that and bring it to the board, but there's some significant findings there for water quality improvements. We have that outfall that leads to the beach, and that's one of the places that Surf Rider and CCOM test, and it's just been a nightmare for years, and we're hoping to come up with a plan to drop some of that water off on the upland versus just discharging directly to the beach. Right. I was just out 2 weeks ago with the team, and they were running a camera. We've got to show you some of that footage. It's just incredible, like the abilities of and the skills of the team that we hired. It was really impressive.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have
Yeah,
questions?
I just want to, Kim, if you just mentioned that about the ditch dune that we're planning to build, the restoration, we submitted everything to the DEC.
Yes, we did.
Surveys that had to get, we were required to get, that we did locally, and with Kim's input and Matt and members of the team, that's moving forward, that project.
Yep. So it was a complete package. The DEC always wants photos. We gave them drone footage, still photos, the survey, the site plan, a very good narrative on why. When we did the interim plan last year, the DEC was super helpful. So I'm hoping they have a quick turnaround on this. If they have any questions, we've always made ourselves available. We'll probably do a quick meet and greet, probably go to their office in Stony Brook and sit down and see if there's anything that they still need from us, because we want to make sure that stays on track to get that dune in place.
And we did do pre-meeting with them in discussing the design of the dune, and have already incorporated into the design suggestions by the DEC for their permitting.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Kim. Scott? Welcome, Scott.
It's a nice venue down here. I haven't been down in before.
Lovely.
Pretty nice. Okay, so I'm the Director of Land Acquisition and Management for the town, and our mission statement is, this department's goal is to help protect our sense of place through acquisition, land management, and implementation of water quality initiatives to preserve East Hampton's unique natural environments, open spaces, farms, and historic places for the enjoyment of all those who share our community. Quite a mouthful, actually. I'd have to cut that down. So 2024 accomplishments on the land acquisition side. Since the inception of the program, we have averaged approximately 20 parcel acquisitions a year. The range actually is significant. One year it was as little as 3, and one year it was as many as 56 acquisitions in a single calendar year. In 2024, the town preserved 15 properties comprising 48.3 acres at an approximate cost of $67 million. The town is in contract on 7 additional parcels comprising 23.8 acres at an approximate cost of $11.08 million, although we did just have a closing at 6 Orchard Shores Road, so that's now down to 6. Our acquisition rate will always revolve around the inventory of properties that meet the criteria for preservation that are on the market in any given year, as well as available funding. Our department had a second multi-use path installed at the Boys and Girls Harbor property that's attracting a robust user base. Additional amenities include a pavilion with picnic tables. I think we're going to actually have a grand opening this spring, so I'm looking forward to that. We have the plaque in place, which just needs to be installed. Our department created and worked with a disc golf committee on a revised course layout, adding 6 additional holes at the Buckskill Meadow Preserve, 12 holes in total. We look forward to working with the Long Island Disc Golf Association out of Heckscher to come and maybe give a clinic, and I'll work with Patrick on that. It's very gratifying to see properties the town purchased for recreational purposes being utilized by a grateful public. There is more and more user base there, which is fantastic. So that should make it obvious our department is not just acquisition, we're also land management. Our land managers remedy town properties and preserve violations and encroachments via voluntary compliance whenever possible. We had 38 violations discovered in 2024. 25 of those are closed and counting. Violations are anything like people mowing outside of their border or extending fencing, dumping on the town side. Our department hired a new environmental tech to further our land management and stewardship goals for all municipally owned properties that are not CPF or nature preserve. So that's 200 additional properties added to our repertoire. We annually monitor 5,800 acres. Monitoring means we walk the boundary of each property. There's 1,142 properties. We maintain over 50 miles of single track trails. That's just what it sounds like. We mow. We walk all of those properties. We cut out both hazard trees and trees that have fallen across the path to keep them open. And we maintain 17 grasslands on our preserves, which generally means it's an annual mow. Scott, how many employees do you have? Well, we do that with 3 employees, small but mighty. I included a chart because I thought it would be easier for the public to see, sort of acquisitions by hamlet. In Montauk, we've acquired 21 parcels, 31.1 acres. Amagansett, 10 parcels, 20.5 acres. East Hampton, 9 parcels, 16.4 acres. Springs, 17 parcels, 30.39 acres. Wainscott, 1 parcel, 28 acres. But oh, what a property it is. In the village, 2 parcels, 2.9 acres for a total of 60 parcels. Look at that, I did my math right, 20 per year. 129.9 acres at $115.87 million investments. Okay. So on to 2025 goals for the land acquisition side. We plan to continue to pursue the preservation of environmental sensitive properties, parcels for recreation, those parcels that build on other open space, trail connections, and trail buffers. On December 21st, 2024, Governor Hochul signed a modified CPF law into effect, and East Hampton has taken the lead in coordinating with the other 4 East End towns to hire a CPF regional council, as well as reestablishing a Peconic Bay Region Committee. In fact, we just had a meeting this past Friday with Assemblyman Schivoni and Giglio and Senator Palumbo, as well as 4 of the 5 East End towns. And so we are working diligently to meet our 90-day mandate to both establish the council and this committee, and our first meeting is actually April 25th. We're going to continue our practice of recapturing former farm parcels to reinvigorate our farming heritage. We have a closing actually on the 24th of this month, 20 Springs Fireplace Road. It's about 20 acres. Once acquired, we're actually going to be submitting a new RFP, so we will be soliciting farmers for that property, so I'm looking forward to that. We balance land preservation activity with affordable housing initiatives and coordinate directly with our Housing and Community Development Department. And we will continue our work with the Planning Department, the Town Attorney's Office, ARB, Building Department, Town Board, and engineering firms towards the rehabilitation of several historic buildings acquired and designated by the Town Board. And on the land management side, for goals, we have 2 arborists on staff who are coordinating with the Highway Department and Town Board to perform tree risk assessments, as well as the general public for that purpose. As you heard earlier, we're also working with the DEC and Town Board with regard to fire risk solutions and issues. We're continuing to explore and implement bamboo management options, monitoring the increased number of preserved acres, walking each property corner to corner, participate on the Wildlife Management Committee, TIC Committee, Nature Preserve Committee, and continue to maintain over 50 miles of single-track trails. And I really, I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to give a shout out to my staff, because not only are they doing all of their day-to-day management monitoring, creating management plans, meeting suspected encroachment violators on site, but we have an ongoing project at Buckskill Meadow, updating that disc golf course and it was actually on the cover page, a picture of that. Using SPB pitch pine felled trees as part of the props. We made a log wall, and we're doing other things with trying to repurpose that wood that's down on that property. Continuing to do the tree risk assessments, doing drone photography for the board, et cetera. And no matter what I throw at them, or what the Town Board may throw at them, mostly David, they are ready, willing, and able. And I just want to express my gratitude to them for their hard work and dedication. And if you'll indulge me, I want to give you a couple of fun facts on this disc golf course, because I'm pretty proud of it. It's one of 3 courses on the island, and there's an app called UDisc, and you could track the analytics right on that application. So there are 49 players on the UDisc app that have put in 261 recreational hours, played 311 rounds, and taken 652,000 steps. Why do I find that interesting? Because I played with 24 different players so far on that course, and only 6 of that 24 actually were on that UDisc app, which means there's actually at minimum 10 times that number that actually utilizing this park. So that's 2,610 recreation hours, 3,110 rounds, and a staggering 6,520,000 steps. And add to that the multi-use path that rings that, there's got to be at least 10 times again that number. 65 million steps? Wow, you're going to break your app. Okay.
Before you go on, cost to use the property?
Free.
Free.
All that to say thank you to John Rooney, our Director of Recreation, who initiated the disc golf course, and a great big thank you for the Town Board for supporting creative uses on these parcels that we've acquired with CPF for recreational purposes. And I really, just on a personal level, I'm grateful to be a part of it. So that's what I have. Glad to take any questions.
Maybe I see a department head meeting in the future.
Disc golf.
Disc golf.
Love it.
I love it. Mr. Lees and I have an appointment on Thursday to do just that, so all are welcome.
Questions for Scott?
Scott, just to advise the public, like the CPF fund itself, the transfer tax, the timing of that is going to expire is when exactly?
2050.
Right.
We'll be collecting revenue for a while. There's still some great properties to acquire, so I'm glad to have that resource to be able to do it. 0.5% of that going towards housing, which is great. I mean, what a shot in the arm for the program, for you and for the town. So all good things.
And the other thing to speak to, you had that great graph in there with, what the CPF fund has brought in over the years and how it's gone up and down. What have been I kind of looked through it and I'm like thinking, oh, COVID hit, a lot of people moved out here, there are a lot of real estate transactions that drove it. But, obviously the income to that fund is indicatively tied to the economy out here as well and the number of real estate transactions. So, do you concerns with the economy right now for what the CPF fund is going to be this year based on where we're at, or no, just too early to tell?
No, I don't really have a concern. It goes up and down over the years. The low was probably 2009. Where there was an actual concern by the town board that we wouldn't be able to cover our debt service, but it never came to pass. And so pre-COVID, a high year was probably 32 million, and last year, 2023 audited year was a little over 47 million. This year it's going to be over 50 million. 2024 was going to be over 50 million. I don't suspect it's going to go down. Even if it went down to 40 million, heaven forbid, it's an amazing amount of money. It's a wonderful resource to continue the projects that we've got going on. So no, I'm not concerned.
Thank you.
Scott, I look forward to bringing up some of the potential changes to the town board for Chapter 182 also. I know the Nature Preserve Committee has discussed that and sending a recommendation to the town board. This has been a slow burn. 8 years I've been on the board. Started before that, so I would like to try to get that to the board sometime maybe in the springtime for discussion on there. I think that will also assist not just your staff managed, but also for the town to be able to adjudicate any issues on any of the town's lands also.
That's it. I think it's the biggest change, and thank you for bringing that up. Really, there's no teeth on the land management side for what we can enforce that's outside the code. And so this is an opportunity for not only our land stewards, but also, Marine Patrol or police to actually have something that is adopted by the town board after public hearing so that we can continue to enforce what would otherwise be common sense, not storing your boats for long periods of time on a community resource or trailers or cars for that matter. So we have all of those issues, and that will be a great help if we can adopt that.
Thank you, Scott.
Sure. Thanks, Scott.
All right, next up, we have John Barley Dunn. Share with us his accomplishments and goals for agriculture.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I haven't been down here yet either. It's really nice. Tough act to follow there, Wilson, but I'll do my best. Aquaculture and habitat management. Okay, our mission statement is also kind of long-winded. I have to cut this one down, but we exist for the purpose of enhancing commercially valuable molluscan shellfish stocks in local waters. Shellfish are available for harvest by all properly licensed town residents. The department produces large quantities of seed shellfish, currently hard clams, eastern oysters, and bay scallops, and disseminates them into local waters, including Lake Montauk, Napeague Harbor, 3 Mile Harbor, Accabonac Harbor, Hog Creek, and Northwest Creek. We operate a shellfish hatchery on Fort Pond Bay, which is right down the road here. A land-based ambient baywater nursery on 3 Mile Harbor, and an off-bottom field grow-out system in Napeague Harbor. All beautiful places, all spread throughout town. And some species are also overwintered in various sites throughout town. Our 24 accomplishments. One of the things we're most proud of is we built the 3rd oyster reef in Accabonac Harbor. So there's now 3 oyster reefs in Accabonac Harbor. We couple with the South Fork Sea Farmers on those projects. A lot of volunteers are involved. There's East Hampton High School students that are involved doing actual research on those reefs. We reinvigorated bay scallop spat collection, which I'll elaborate on. That's my prop here. We completed many shellfish dive surveys, which is something that we haven't been able to do for the last several years due to staffing. And one aspect of, if anybody remembers Southampton College, when that used to be around, they had a class that used to come out and do our dive surveys for us. So that's kind of one thing that went by the wayside when the college went belly up. And although there is a lab there now, we do work with that lab now, but not not really hands-on stuff like surveys. We set a record for the largest average size seed oysters yet. That's 62.6 millimeters, which is about 2.5 inches. So what that translates to is basically our mission is to grow as many shellfish as possible, get them up to as large a size as possible so that when we seed them onto the bottom, they'll actually survive, right? So the largest shellfish will survive. So getting a 2.5-inch oyster in one season is a really, really nice oyster size. So the more of those will survive to be harvested. And there were about 1.5 million of those. We managed to grow out about 4.5 million seed clams, bay scallops, which was a disappointing year, so we hope to overcome that this year. We worked with Peconic Bay Keeper, Cornell Cooperative, and Rob Vasluth of Save Environmental in a novel eelgrass restoration method, which you might have read about in the papers. Basically, Rob goes out and harvests eelgrass seed, and we take those seed and we glue those to our overwintered hard clams, which are about the size of a nickel. Actually glue them to the clam, seed those clams onto the bottom. Those clams burrow into the bottom and then give that eelgrass seed a place to start growing. So instead of broadcast seeding eelgrass seeds, which is one method, and having them drift away in a storm event, the clams actually get those seeds into the bottom. So that was done in Napeague Harbor, and Steve Schott from Cornell will come back this summer and assess the efficacy of that method. So hopefully we'll get to do a whole lot more of that. And as usual, we had about 100 or so oyster gardeners at our 5 sites in town. And a shout out to Scott, actually, because if it weren't for land acquisition and working with Scott, we wouldn't have access to some of these gardens. Some of these gardens are actually accessed through CPF properties, like the one at Hog Creek, the one at the lake, 159 East Lake. So that's a nice partnership that we have. When Scott accumulates a property on the harbor, he usually lets me know, and if it works out, we can establish a garden there. It gives people access to the water, and the oyster gardening program is great. For those that don't know, people in town can pay us a fee to get all the gear they need, and they get 1,000 baby oysters each year to grow, and then they can grow them and eat them as they wish. So basically, I don't know how many oysters you all eat, but having 1,000 at your disposal is a lot of oysters. And all the while, they're filtering their food. An adult oyster can filter 50 gallons of water a day. All the gear that they're using to grow their oysters provides habitat. There's all kinds of other stuff living in and around those cages, so it's a great program.
So Barley, when does the application for that open up?
It's open, and I usually, deadlines are vague. I set a deadline, and I usually allow things to trickle in. So if anybody's interested, sure, I'll take an application now for the next few weeks. And applications are on our website, so those can be accessed. 2025 goals. So one of the things I'd like to do is establish a citizen science program affiliated with our oyster gardening program to collect bay scallop spat. And what that means is, quick shellfish biology lesson. When shellfish spawn, they have a larval cycle. Their larvae are planktonic for about 2 weeks, and then they set to the bottom. So this funny looking kind of grubby thing is actually a scallop spat collector. This gets hung in the water column, figured June 1, which is right around the time that they're going to naturally spawn. We hang these in the water column. They soak for 6 weeks. The bay scallops spawn. Larvae are all throughout the harbor. And when they're ready to set, which is about 2 weeks post-spawn, they're actually attracted to the green bag, which mimics eelgrass, which is choice number 1, but doesn't really exist anymore. So they're attracted to this bag. The larvae actually get in through this tiny mesh and attract to this blue material called netron. So we will soak these for 6 weeks. During that critical time, around about June, pull them out, and there can be as many as 100 to 1,000 baby scallops in each one of these bags. So one thing we'd like to do is incorporate this bay scallop spat collection in all of our oyster gardens. So oyster gardeners can help collect the baby scallops. They'll be able to grow them. But it also help us to monitor the spat fall. Because believe it or not, although all we're hearing about are dead scallops, there are enough scallops getting through the winter, spawning during the summer, that there's been a great spat fall. There's been great juvenile recruitment. And then, of course, as we know, once they are about to be harvested in the fall, they perish in about August, September when the waters warm up. Their parasite proliferates. So this will help us monitor the population. We'll be able to engage all of our oyster gardeners and give them some scallops to grow. Another thing we'd like to do is also monitor recruitment of oysters in all harbors, and that's a little bit more intuitive. Basically, what we can do is take a mesh bag with oyster shell in it, put that on the bottom around that critical time. Oysters are attracted to oysters, so we can monitor oyster spat fall as well. More oyster reefs is on the docket. We're shooting for about one a year, and that's basically based on the infrastructure we have available. So we're going to have, permits are all set. We'll have another oyster reef going in 3 Mile Harbor at the end of Harbor, I'm drawing a blank, Boatman Road, which is just north of Briggs Marina. There's a little tiny bit of land there. We're going to stick an oyster reef. So keep an eye out for that in June. We'll continue to grow millions of hard clams and oysters for the town, hopefully have a better bay scallop season, and continue to host tours for school groups, community organizations. We have a great relationship with South Fork Natural History Museum. They have a marine summer camp. They come around every year. Pete Topping from Maconic Baykeeper, he's going to do some tours with us. So we're always open for tours, volunteer groups come through. It's pretty interesting stuff. And I think that's about it. Happy to field any questions.
Thanks, Barley. Questions for Barley? Comments?
Every time you give a presentation, I get so hungry just thinking about it. It's just that time.
It is that time.
And actually, I would like to get an application for an oyster garden. I would love to do that.
All right.
It'd be great this
Great.
year. No, I have no questions. I want to thank you for what you do. I think it's got so many benefits for this town, across industries, for our baymen, you name it. It's one of those things this town does that's very unique, but so valuable. So thank you.
Yeah, it is unique, and it's one of those things that it'd be a hard thing to start up, but once you have it, you definitely very, very wise to hold on to it because it's a hard thing to recreate. Yeah. And there's only two of us on the whole island, us and Islip. That's it.
As far as town-wise.
Town-wise, yeah, municipally.
Yeah, Barley, you've heard this from me before, and the board has also. One of the uniqueness to your department is the only department in the town of East Hampton that actually grows something. Then too, a lot of times we're either building something, permitting something, reviewing something, but what you and your staff actually do in nearly 100-year-old buildings is actually grow millions upon millions of mollusks on there then too, to try to better the environment, but also, as Tom just mentioned, the fisheries then too. So I commend you and your staff for that, our true scientists to that. And I also would like to continue with working on the consolidation efforts also as we continue to move forward. It's nice to see that the town of East Hampton wants to make sure that we protect, as in the goal 6, environmental fisheries needs also then too. I know some things in Southampton might not be as strong to that, but the town of East Hampton definitely does support our aquaculture.
Yeah, and a shout out to the crew too. Jeremy, Sam, Lucia, Ava, they're feet on the ground right now. And they're an amazing crew. I went away to a vacation, came back, everything was smooth as silk. So I felt like,
I mean, but there's one thing I was going to raise David's point is it's a fairly unique skill set you guys have, and obviously staffing must be challenging in that realm.
It's getting tougher every day.
In terms of creating that pipeline for future people in the town who want to get involved with this, what are the degrees? What are the requirements for young people who might want to go into this and continue this for the town?
I mean, biology is a great background, but even then, our hatchery manager he's got a background in geology, and a lot of it is just really a lot of it is personality, having the attention to detail, being regimented. Basically, what we do is the same thing over and over again. Just like any other farm, we plant the seed, we nurture it, we do this, we keep things clean, doing the same thing over and over again. We can teach anybody how to do this if they have the passion.
Can I
But,
take that
yeah,
one further, Marley?
Biology, marine biology is always helpful because then if something does happen, we need to figure out what happened. And that's where the biology comes in.
And can I just echo what a caller said earlier about the appreciation of your intern programs, your student education programs? I think that's where it starts.
Correct, that's what I was going to.
Yeah, that's one of the best. Yeah, that's one of the most rewarding things. Like these high school students that are working on our oyster reefs, they're going to go to college for marine bio, and they're getting hands-on. A lot of them, they helped with our permitting, which nobody touches until well after college. Just knowing how to deal with the permitting process, dealing with the maps and the aerials and getting all that stuff done. That's a huge advance, and having hands-on experience. We'll take on anyone, we have volunteer interns, paid interns, and just having that on the resume for anybody who wants to pursue this is so much more valuable than anything they're going to get in the classroom.
And just going with what Kate and Tom is saying, and you just mentioned it, I think what's happening with you and the youth of East Hampton right now, as fun as just going off a paddleboard and throwing seed out there is fun for a 4th or 5th grader, maybe a 6th grader.
Yeah.
But when you get into the high school years right now, Steph Forsberg and her team at the high school right now is doing all these science programs that the valedictorians of the high school are moving on with. And I think you just mentioned it. If you seed your youth, you nurture your youth, you will then have a pipeline for the needs of the town or aquaculture in general. I think that's something that you've been able to do outside of growing mollusk. You're actually growing interest within your science field then too. And that's, I think, even more difficult to do, with youth nowadays then too. For that, you should be commended.
And that's where the oyster gardening program comes in too. Just, some people don't even eat them. They just want to be out there growing them, and they learn so much just by going through the process.
So when you're putting the oyster reef in June, who's going to be assisting you with that? Do you have a group of volunteers?
We have some volunteers, but we'll take more. We still have to bag all the shell. There's still a lot of preparation that needs to be done. We have a pile of oyster shell out back behind the hatchery that all needs to be bagged, and then we're going to have to hump it from the hatchery to the site. Just a chain gang of people is really what gets it done. And then we're probably going to have a party there afterwards. So all the more reason.
Well, thanks, Barley, for all that you do. I'm particularly interested to hear how that eelgrass experiment goes, because that's a really a novel way of thinking about it. I hope it works.
Great. Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay. So moving on, we are now up to Scott, you're back. Yes, to present the 2025 proposed CPF management and stewardship plan.
Okay, so 17th edition of this. Okay, Town Law 64E, the Community Preservation Fund law, requires that we create a management stewardship plan for all acquired CPF properties, particularly if we intend to spend stewardship dollars on them. So we're all required. I mean, it's just simply a good opportunity to revisit. Management stewardship is an ebb and flow, so anytime I can put my eyes on a plan for updating it is a good opportunity, because all properties need some form of stewardship, being posting up signs, cleaning up of debris, or reconciling encroachments. We have acquired interest and rights in real property for 542 parcels, with 6 more in contract, representing 2,437.24 acres. We accomplish the vast majority of our stewardship work in-house. We create a baseline document, which basically documents the parcel at the time of acquisition. We help create management plans for those properties with some proposed human use. And we regularly monitor all CPF properties for encroachments, dumping, or other issues. And now both baseline documents and the management plans are available on the town's website. And we included links, page 6 and 7, for those sites on the website right in the plan. And beyond in-house management, the proposed management stewardship plan discusses any known projects along with associated expenses. Significant projects for 2025 may be historic restoration on the Carl Fisher House on Foxborough Road. Engineering is in process. And the Edwards House, which is on the Duck Creek compound on Squaw Road, and engineering is in process on that. Please note we have not gone out for a request for proposal for these projects, and therefore we don't have an estimate of cost. There may also be other projects that we are not yet aware of, so once adopted, we may need to revisit this plan over the course of the year for modification via public hearing. That's a nice feature of the law that we can modify. The stewardship budget being just over 4.675 million is the allowable 10% of available stewardship funding based upon our last auditable year, which in this case was 2023 at 47 million. And with regard to this plan, the responsibility of our department was to create a document which will guide us in our efforts toward appropriate manager stewardship goals and objectives, assist in prioritizing projects, and control related expenditures. And this just leads to transparency to the plan, giving the general public an opportunity to participate and discuss surrounding proposed expenditures. Discussion surrounding proposed expenditures. The draft plan can be found on the town's website and in the town clerk's office. And again, this is a year-over-year document. I mean, not a lot has changed other than updates to the numbers. And obviously, you know, the different types of projects can change year over year. But basically, the big ones would be historic restoration. Or if the town board elects to put another multi-use path somewhere in town, we can revisit that. It's not currently in the plan, but again, it's adaptable. Is there any questions on the plan? I wish we had actually a cover page of that. Can you just show the cover of the first page? I don't know if that's.
It should be.
It's a beautiful property.
Yeah, and I just so that is actually Feather Farm on Cedar Street, and it is lovely, but it wasn't that lovely before. I mean, it was lovely view shed all along, but if you get a chance to actually stop by there and walk that property with Isabel and Nick, I think Kathy, you probably did. I know David and I walked it. It's just, you know, phenomenal change from basically raw land. I mean, there used to be houses along Cedar Street. The houses were removed before we acquired it, and then converted to an active farm, and they're doing a great job over there. Very proud of them. I'm sorry. Any
Ask you a
questions?
question. You know, it's the copy that's on the front page. Is that the revised copy from the updated law? Because it
yeah, I
used
didn't
to
really
be that
include a lot in there.
agricultural lands was first in the litany, wasn't it?
It wasn't first in the law. Directly relates open space and agriculture in the same lump because that's how, you know, the federal government recognizes it. So the language with regard to agricultural lands being the #1 priority is still in the modified law. It's deep, but it's there.
But this leads with now establishment of parks.
Yes. So the original led with establishment of parks too.
Oh, it did.
It was later in the document that mentions that farmland is the #1 priority for the program. That's still there.
I mean, my only question, and we've had this conversation many times, and Ian and I have just talked about it too, is, you know, how we are assigning funds for repairs to historical properties. What is the process for that? You know, how are they selected? You know, it's. I know it's in the works, but it's just, you know, if you could just, give us how it has operated and what you think we might need to change in that realm.
Oh, wow. Well, behind your backs, I usually call you guys the Twilight Zone. You control the horizontal and the vertical. So a lot of that comes from the top down, from you to me. But in the past, with regard to an historic restoration, is that what you're referring to? So the then town board, this is years past. This isn't like the last few years under your administration. But the process was a little bit more rudimentary, and the board would ask me to, you know, restore a historic site that we acquired, and we would, you know, go right out to hire, say, for example, an engineer like Drew Bennett and Bob Hefner, because he was our historian at the time, that guided us, and they would produce a report for the town board to review. We would review sort of, it was like a point by point, this color paint, this type of window, this type of material. And once the town board was comfortable with that, with the parameters or the list of projects that were going to go forward, we would actually go out for a request for proposal from, you know, contractors. And once those came back and we reviewed them and chose a winner, the project would simply start. At that time, in the beginning, because, you know, we were new at this, or I certainly was new at this, we didn't run through the planning department or planning board. Buzzy was involved, the fire marshal at least. At least we did that part. as right as we could. And so, times change and we evolve, and as we learn, the process changes. So, I mean, from today forward, we have 5 historic, more than 5 buildings, but 5 need some form of rehabilitation. And so from today forward, I mean, I'm guessing it's going to be a minimum of 10 years before we get all of those historic buildings back up to a usable status so we can hand over a key to a potential licensee. And we had some discussions with regard to how that process works. Do we go through the full site plan process? And that's a discussion I think the town, you put me on the spot here.
Yeah, I'm afraid. Sorry, I was.
Yeah. That's a discussion the town board is going to have, and sort of give me direction, because we want to do it as right as we can at all times. And I'm here to admit that we probably didn't do as right as we could have in the beginning. So this is an opportunity to do better. We always want to do better. There's always a better way to do the same thing. I use that anytime I interview a new staff member. There's always a better way. So please tell me if you see something. I want to improve it. So.
I also think that the commitment to the town to historical preservation, and specifically using it within the bounds of the CPF laws and guidelines, protecting some of the structures that are some of that provide some of the greatest amount of high quality vistas in the town of East Hampton has been super important in what we've done. So we've accumulated more historical structures probably in the last 8 years than the last 20 years. Yeah. So what happens now is, by doing so before everything gets outpriced, like the Dodge property is the heart of Springs. Mm-hmm. The amount of phone calls I've received on that for individuals I thought that would never contact me on this or anything else that loved it were acutely aware if that was a miss, there would be a hedgerow in front of it. The same with the 66 Main Street and others then too. But what we've done, that's one of the biggest differences, that's we've accumulated more properties, and while we go out to engineering, we are still bound by the law as far as the amount of stewardship funds that we could have for restoration. Restoration then also has to go within what the ADA needs are, desires of the property based on the town board, but also to prevailing wage and out to open bid. What I think we have to do as a town board is be very realistic to some of the operators or some of the interested parties that are partnering with the town on when in that queue that funding might be able to move forward. And that conversation, I think, should be had. It can be had potentially now. When we look at some of those properties on that list, going back to the Edwards House at the Duck Creek, there was a preservation of some of the structures, but not the main Edwards House. It was cladded, but again, over time, it needs to be done more. You have the Dodge property, you have the Carl Fisher House on there, 666 Main Street on there. Then to Wayne Scott, you have Brooks Park. These are all properties that are in some form of need of restoration, either for health and safety, for ADA needs, or also almost to a full recreation on that. I think setting out a priority list of where the town wants to focus on the efforts and the need of the town board members and the department to say, we should probably do this first over last. Also will make reasonable expectations for what the town board wants to see the staff work on, but also for some of those licensees or interested parties out there. Personally, myself, I believe that since we're already within the restoration, that we have efforts as far as engineering for the Carl Fisher House and also the Edwards House, those should go at the top of that list right now, because we're already well ahead of the others right now then too. And that funding for those will probably be capped at what the stewardship plans would be to try to get those completed instead of kicked again then too. Right. The Dodge property is a very solid property. We were very fortunate that the brothers really took care of that property. So it's not going to take nearly as much, but we should look onto that. 66 Main Street in Waynescott, right now, the barn is in great shape. The main house has been fully gutted, but saved some of the structural elements of it. That should be secure, but also go out to these steps of engineering or a historical structure report, historical analysis of the structure itself. These are all steps that we can go in. It might take us years. Brooks Park, to me, right now, is almost on the last one of those 5 because of the deterioration of the building where it is right now. I want to make sure we save what we have historically, but also just set realistic goals to our partners in the community on what to anticipate from the town. That's just my personal belief on it. There's not funding to go around for them all, but to be able to put a time frame out there that funding can be used, and I think will just help manage everyone's time, efforts, expectations. That's something I would like to have discussed or allow for you to go do your job better too, Scott. Not saying you do it not good, but even more effectively.
So did you just say I should go to site plan review?
No, I didn't say that.
Oh,
So what I said is trying to focus on certain properties, priority properties as far as finances right now. That's before even the other types of review, so because the finances are baked within what we're discussing here right now. And within the finances, to get something complete right now, I think we have to be really, very realistic. Sorry, they told me to take it down.
I was asking Anne-Marie,
Yeah,
because
I think you have to be very realistic, reasonable to our partners to when those projects are going to get complete, because they put a lot of time and effort into it. And that's something I want to be just, have that greater understanding out there. The process we'll get to, but also part of that is making sure we have a priority list then too.
So
That's what I'm trying to get
you've
to.
identified the 5 properties that Scott's referred to. You said the
Right.
Dodge property, 66 Weed Scott Main Street, Duck Creek Farm, the Edwards House, the Carl Fisher House in Brooks Park.
That's correct.
Yeah, so I think there's 2 issues here, and I've spoken about this in the past because it comes up with the property management committee. I think it's our priorities, and I think everybody brings up very good points that we should decide what properties are the most in need, what is the most important work we could do now and allocate funding based on what CPF allows. That's important. I think what Scott tactfully asks us for is a clarity in the process. Right. And I think that we can decide which projects we want to proceed with, but if we don't have permitting and approvals in place or whatever is required there, we still can't move forward. And so I look forward to continue to talk about that and providing some clarity so that we can stay up on top of this, as Tom and Dave have both mentioned.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I think everyone is saying the right thing here. I think a priority list is important, and I also think clarity in the process is important. And one of the things I think we need to look at is where we establish a community benefit code, resource. A community resource, a community benefit. Anytime a property is to be used for the entire community, then we should evaluate and update our code on the process for permitting.
Yeah.
For that, so that we can have a definition in the code, which is really what we need. We don't have now. So I support that moving on that ASAP as we're looking at the priority list. I think that for me, that's one of my top priorities, so that you have your process and everyone understands the process.
I agree with that, and something I've talked about, just in terms of the prioritization, even the process, is some form of rubric, because I think, one of the dilemmas here is that, it can be arbitrary, the decision-making process, and I don't think that's fair to the community or the public as a whole. I think the way we make decisions to prioritize and move projects forward should try to ideally follow this, it should be the same for every property, because I think there's just, people have whims, etc. But a rubric that says, okay, look, this has benefit for the entire community, well, that would be a high scoring kind of thing on my rubric versus, other issues might score it down. But I think having that in place to prioritize and move things forward, engineering plans being another example, I think is a great way to kind of say, okay, this is why we're prioritizing.
Kind of like the water technical advisory.
Exactly.
Right, and I'm going to put a plug in, because Scott and I have had this conversation about these ADA compliant, paths that we put in at Buckskill and we put in at Boys and Girls Harbor. They get a great deal of use.
Yeah.
Folks doing some rehabilitation, folks that don't want to walk in nature but are worried about ticks, kids learning to ride a bicycle, strollers, you name it. And I believe that every hamlet at least should have that opportunity. So I know you're going to be coming forward, Ian, soon with the Dodge property in the management plan, and I don't know if that's something that's been considered, but I'd like to see more CPF properties have this kind of very natural rambling path because it is widely used by our community.
It's great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Scott, thank you very much. I've always stated that this document here actually has such great information and insight into what the town does, because it hits everything from agricultural, recreation, open space, and water quality all in one then too. It's a very good read. So thank you again for
Yeah, it's the Community Preservation Fund Encyclopedia.
Okay. Next up, we have the New York State Department of State Coastal Resiliency Grant. We're going to get an update from our Deputy Supervisor, Kate Rogers, and from Sam Klein, our Town Intergovernmental Relations Coordinator. Sam, thank you for being so patient.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, Sam, so I'll just start a little bit and just bring everybody back up to speed on this. We received one of the largest grants on Long Island, which was a $600,000 award from the Department of State. And in saying that, I also want to just make note that this is a state grant. There's no federal funding involved. And this grant is protected, it's secure, and that's why we're all confident in moving forward. We are now, it takes much longer than I anticipated to work with we now have our contract managers from the state, all of the infrastructure for organizing this and communicating is in place, and we've been given a green light from the state to start moving forward on utilizing this grant and getting this study completed. I also want to set expectations up for the community that this grant, this study is a very long-term engagement, community-based engagement study. That's why, you look at $600,000, it's quite a lot. It's to a third of the component, a very important part of this through all of the tasks that we're going to go through is using consultants for community engagement. So this is a very, very robust engagement-centered grant process. And Sam will explain what it's about. And I'm going to stop there for the moment.
Yeah, no, that was all super great. Hit on a bunch of points. So this project is going to have a really broad scope of work around sustainable planning for a year-round resilient community in a focus area of Montauk. So given this project is about resiliency planning and code changes, as Kate was saying, we understand that there's going to be a lot of complicated and lengthy conversations. So we're definitely wanting to start engagement early and have it often. So that's kind of why we're here today, of taking the opportunity of there being a work session in Montauk to initially talk about the project need, description, our partners, how we picture the framework and direction being figured out, and kind of next steps to where we are now. As Kate was saying, we were notified of this award in November of 2023, and we want folks to know that this isn't something that's tied up in the federal funding freezes that have been on the national news, and that this is secure and moving forward. It just takes time because we're going through the state processes of physical review and qualitative review and collaboration with them.
And it's an intensive study that's going to, even the study itself is going to take a number of years. So I want to set expectations. This is nothing that would indicate any change for tomorrow. The idea of this study is a long-term look, a far-out look in planning for maybe post-FIM, for maybe 30 years out in the future of resiliency in Montauk. So it's a long-term, the study itself will be a long-term study, and it'll study long-term planning. So I wanted to highlight that as well for the community.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and then so to dive into what the area that we're talking about for this project is, so it's the downtown Montauk area with the central business and resort districts, and then it goes north to wrap around both sides of Fort Pond and include the industrial road area, as well as the Montauk Fire Department and the Montauk Playhouse. So it's pretty inclusive of a number of community assets in the area and also areas that are vulnerable to climate risk. So the initiation of this project and the chosen study area partly comes from years of long-range planning that the town has already undertaken through plans like the Coastal Assessment Resiliency Plan and the Hamlet studies, as well as our actual experiences with storms, and a recognition of this area being of critical importance to the overall community. On the image of the right here, it's from the Coastal Assessment Resiliency Plan, and it highlights some of the vulnerabilities of the area.
And I don't think we can highlight enough, to me it's obvious, but to everyone, the importance of continuing the economy of this area as well. So this is one of our, I'll say that because I represent other hamlets, but you know, an intrinsic economic basis for our town, from job creation to the phenomenal amount of taxes that we send to Suffolk County, and we can talk about that in another forum of what we get back, and a hard foundation for our tourist economy.
Yeah, so it's definitely about more than just the property owners in this area. It's about a much broader economic impact of job opportunities, tourism, recreational activity, and a source of goods and services for people that live here or visit here. And folded into the vibrance of this economic center is its proximity to the beach, which is a major draw to Montauk and a focal point of the area, and there's this interdependence between the economy and the environment, and we want both to succeed for overall community resilience.
And that one picture is pre-FIMP nourishment, so I just want to highlight, I think it's good to remind folks what it looked like before the tremendous beach fill that came from the federal government that David's been working on, of 450,000 approximate cubic yards. And if folks go down there now, it's a vibrant, huge, beautiful beach.
Yeah, and just to go along with that, the shorelines are so dynamic, they're ever changing. And so FIMP immediately restored recreational activity and preserved that community resource that's also a natural buffer. And in doing that, we also recognize that projects like this are long-range planning as well. So just trying to commit to both of those short-term immediate relief that's so necessary, but also that long-term thinking and solutions. So the project description, the project aims to protect and revitalize the Montauk Sustainable Planning Project Study Area to support a year-round resilient community. Planning will include community-supported options for protection of economic infrastructure, key community assets in the tourism industry, strategies for reducing coastal risk and preserving or restoring ecological systems, and specific recommendations for building and zoning code updates to support the vision for the community. So the options put forward will need to be backed by data, assessed for feasibility, and developed with input from the community through the scope of the project. We anticipate there being a system to collect and narrow down recommendations. We rather have a few very detailed recommendations with a blueprint of next steps to implement them, that they're pretty shovel ready to move forward. So we anticipate that being developed with the consultants.
Sorry, Sam, would you just mind talking a little bit about the community assets? Because, you know, my mind's going to like critical infrastructure. Is that where that's talking about? So, yeah.
Yeah, so critical infrastructure, but also housing needs, transportation networks, wastewater, community centers. The Montauk Precinct is there, as well as the Montauk Fire Department. So we think that the community asset inventory is going to be something that the consultants are facilitating, but we'd like for that to take kind of the format of maybe a public workshop. I think that we want to have a system of prioritizing what we're looking at, and so hearing from people, what they want to see happen. I think there's room for us to narrow in on which community assets.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Tom, and while, traditionally a lot of studies have happened in strictly the downtown area, specifically for what you just talked about, what does our infrastructure look like, including, electric needs, where are our substations, the fire department, how do we make sure the fire department, access routes thrive as we handle sea level rise. So that pushing that area up past Industrial Road was on purpose so that we could expand the assets that we're looking at. And I think the asset list will be part of what we'll formulate with the consultants in the community.
Thank you.
And so I know we're describing a project with a very broad scope. So that's partly due to the large umbrella that phrases like resiliency and sustainability, what they encompass. And so when we're talking about categories of resilience that enable a community to withstand disruptions and avoid or recover quickly from potential hardships, we're talking about economic, infrastructure, ecological, and social resilience. So moving on to project partners and the grant. So we already went over this a little bit, but this is a project that's funded by the Department of State from an application that we made through the Consolidated Funding Opportunity. It was for $600,000. There is a match requirement, and the town is meeting that with in-kind town employee staff hours, as well as donated professional services and dollars spent on another project from our project partners. So they are also helping contribute to a significant match, a significant portion of the match requirement on this. The Nature Conservancy, a global environmental organization, they're one of our partners. We were working with them in the application phase of this project, kind of coming off of the CARP work. Their New York adaptation director was one of our CARP committee chairs, and we weren't sure if we were going to end up getting awarded this project. So we wanted to make sure we were still moving the ball. So they agreed to use some funding that they already had on a community consensus building project with Montauk business owners. So that way, at least one part of our planning efforts would be able to move forward regardless of funding for this.
And that's been completed. We're going to talk about that in a later slide.
Yes. One of our other project partners to mention is the Montauk Chamber of Commerce. Preliminarily, we anticipate their involvement to include leadership on a project advisory committee, engagement with stakeholders, assisting with the economic and cost benefit analysis, and overall assisting with the whole management and direction of the project. Another group is the Waterfront Advisory Committee. They've done a lot of work on other related plans, going back to the Town Comprehensive Plan, the Local Waterfront Revitalization Plan, and the Coastal Assessment Resiliency Plan. So we also are thinking that at certain milestones of this project, we'll be taking it to that group at their regularly scheduled meetings for input.
They also, this is an LWRP, Local Waterfront Advisory Plan. That's how we obtain the grant as well. So this is through if we didn't have a local waterfront advisory plan, we wouldn't have been able to access any of this funding. And we're one of the few towns that do, so a little plug for us.
We deserve it. So now I'll circle back to the Nature Conservancy's match project. So It was completed by consultants that were hired by the Nature Conservancy. The project ran from around November of 2023 through the springtime of 2024. The purpose of the project was to include members of the Montauk business community, some of whom have previously felt left out of resiliency planning, and hold engagement opportunities to understand concerns around coastal resilience, find shared ideas, and gather information. The previous town planning director and I were some of the town staff who served as regular participants on the TNC project. Due to our involvement with the CARP and also the upcoming project that we're talking about today. The consensus buildings projects goals were to understand, and understanding starts with listening. So that's definitely what we viewed our participation on this project as. We wanted the consultants to really take the lead and just listen and learn to what happens when you give stakeholders the microphone and we kind of take a step off stage. So the consultants use regular small group meetings, individual interviews, and then a report back workshop, which Councilman David Lease and Councilwoman Rogers both attended. I know that meant a lot to the stakeholders who had been a part of this group to then have the council people come to a meeting. Some points of consensus included a shared understanding of Montauk's vulnerability to climate events, a desire for improved communication and engagement, shared visions for a vibrant year-round Montauk. Some other consensus raised by participants in this project were concerns around demographic changes accelerating with a loss of local middle-class families, concerns with lack of affordable workhouse affordable housing, and the winter of 2024 seeming significantly slower for businesses than previous years. So that's all information that just came out of these conversations, and then some recommendations for future work that the consultants helped put together. Included combining smart growth into resiliency planning to have a holistic approach to the current challenges, enhance partnership between the business community and town through communication and strategic engagement, and performing a municipal economic analysis to explore the interdependencies of residents, business owners, and tourism for Montauk.
I'm just going to stop you there for 1 second because I know people have been looking at the ecology and preservation of the environment for a long time. I'm not going to say how many decades. The word smart growth, or the concept of smart growth, was at one time defined as like a new urbanization, and was really not, from the environmental side, really a scary term for people to hear. Once you heard that, you envisioned, 4-story apartment buildings and all of that. That term has evolved and has a different meaning now. And it is about how to plan out your community in a sustainable, resilient way. I wish they would have found another expression. They recycled this older one, but that's the term that's what this term has evolved into meaning. So I just want to point that out because when I used to hear that, the hair on the back of my neck would stand up.
Yeah, so we can go on to the factors that we think are going to guide the project's direction and set up a framework to develop this. So one of the main factors is the work plan between the town of East Hampton and the Department of State, which is the grant agency. The work plan we've been really collaborating on. It outlines agreed upon task items that compose the scope of work, as well as deliverables that the task items have to develop. So those are what we're agreeing on as reimbursable work under this grant award. Currently, there's a draft document pending final review with the Department of State, but we've preliminarily been given confirmation from our grant managers of the revisions and requests that we've made. Another main document, which will have similar content to the work plan for consistency, is the request for proposals that the town is going to issue, and the proposals we get back and score from consultants and then move forward with a professional services agreement to whoever is competitively hired. The project advisory committee and a possible subcommittee will be formed to guide the project. Members are going to have to be vetted by the Department of State on who they are and what their role is. For our strategy of figuring out who's going to be on the project advisory committee, we were thinking that it might be a best approach to think about the types of stakeholders and input that we want to be on this in order to make it successful. So preliminarily, we were thinking of having a local and regional environmental organization, multiple business owners that might have slightly different points of views. So maybe someone who's a year-round business and also someone who's not year-round but would like to be. Or if there's a difference between a multi-generational business owner versus a new one. As well as maybe involving some of the other relevant town committees or town boards to see if they have input as well, even certain expertise like a local builder if we're talking about building code updates. So I think we're going to be more looking at categories and then who could potentially fit into those categories and has time to.
So basically, we want to talk to everyone.
Yeah, and if we can have an ambassador that represents a bunch of people, that's ideal on our end, so we can kind of have someone that facilitates to a broader group. The public education program and stakeholder engagement program, those are the other key documents that we see really shaping a lot of this project. So we want those to be formed into strategy documents that include goals and scope of the outreach program, key partners, and analysis of audiences that we want to engage, and then recommended engagement methods. These will be followed throughout the project to share deliverables, obtain, evaluate, and incorporate feedback. I also wanted to mention that I would love for kind of in the background for this project to be creating some sort of standard operating procedures that the town can consider for future projects that have nothing to do with this one. But in order to put forward something like that, we need a proof of concept. So I hope that maybe we're able to develop something into a format that would make it transferable for other people to use at the town. So where we are now at the project, so we had the award notice November 2023. We then had a draft work plan between the town and the town received the draft work plan from the grant agency in August of 2024. Then we spent a couple months just reviewing that, having back and forth with them. At this moment, that work plan sits with the state, so now it's going through channels on there. And as Kate was saying, they have more recently kind of given us an informal green light that we can go ahead and start moving forward and issue an RFP, that they would want to see that RFP and approve that RFP, but that we can get started on this work now.
And we have that in writing.
Yeah, we do. Typically, the town would wait until we have an executed contract before moving forward with releasing an RFP, but in this case, the state has let us know that it might be 1 to 5 months before we receive that contract from them. So they encouraged us to move forward because of that delay in the timeline. Especially out here, there are certain audiences that we can only really engage with certain times a year. So I think the sooner, the better that we're able to do this.
And Sam, when you say the state, we have dedicated project managers that we've been working with. So I just want to put some, there's people that are dedicated to this grant that we're working with, that Sam has been in communication with for a year now and developed a relationship there as well.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty much all I have. So yeah, our next step is working on a request for proposals and getting that approved by the state. And then if the town wanted to issue that, then we would hire consultants to really run with the rest of the scope of work.
And coming back with another presentation on the details.
Well, thank you. I mean, look, Montauk's my home. It's my kids' home. And, I acknowledge that our infrastructure's not perfect. Historical planning could have been more thoughtful, but we love it. And, I will say that, residents can be resistant to change. So the more communication we have, the better. But, in this case, for residents as much as anything else, the clock is ticking. We have FIMP that's bought us some time, but we have to get a move on this. And, to residents of this town, please be involved in the process. Don't come on the back end saying you don't like this. You don't, get involved as early as you can, join groups, maybe not your voice, but, if there's an interest group that you're part of, join it and have that representative get in contact, because this is critical to Montauk's future.
So I've sat in the past with James Lima, and I look forward to continuing with you, Kate, on forward as a liaison to Montauk and others. But yeah, let's see how it moves forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think given the long lead times with the state, it's incumbent on us to develop the RFP to get their sign off on so that we can get it out to the field.
Okay.
And by putting it out there in the field with an RFP, I wouldn't mind putting out there to a wider net also then too. I think that would also assist us in other communities and can be East Coast to West Coast on it also.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea. All right. Thank you, Sam.
All right, great. Thank you.
Okay. John was the most patient of them all.
With a very important.
John
He's
Rooney,
bringing the thunder.
our superintendent of recreation, here to discuss the town park thunder and lightning policy.
Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. So Dave and I wanted to propose to have a thunder and lightning policy for recreational facilities. And it was something our department could distribute along with an approved permit for, let's say, a picnic area or ball field, pavilions, Fort Pond House. So that's what this is all about. And we had some help from the town attorney's office as well. So do you guys have copies?
Yes.
We do have a copy. A lot of this, what John's going to, was mimicked off
Section 11.
Section 11, exactly. Not mimic might be the wrong word, but modeled off some of the language from Section 11. The town does have actually a thunder lightning policies for our guarded beaches that the lifeguards deal with. But if I can read it through, is that okay, Madam Supervisor?
Yeah.
So the thunder and lightning policy at active town recreational facilities, 1, this policy will apply to all town-owned active recreational facilities. 2, thunder and lightning necessitate that any use of the town active recreational facility be suspended. The occurrence of thunder and or lightning is not subject to interpretation or discussion. 3, if lightning is observed at the site of the town active recreation facility 15 or fewer minutes prior to the schedule of a start of the park, no use of the town park shall occur for a minimum of 30 minutes. 4, when thunder is heard and or lightning is seen, the following procedures should be adhered to. Suspend use of the town recreational facility. Members of the public and or staff shall not stand under or near a tree and shall stay away from all poles, antennas, towers, underground watering systems. After thunder and or lightning has left the area, wait a minimum of 30 minutes after the last boom is heard or strike is seen before resuming use of the town recreational facilities. If at any time during the 30-minute delay additional thunder and or lightning occurs, the 30-minute delay clock starts over again. And 2, so again, it's one of those things I think we have to effectuate in a written policy that might be more commonly used, but we want to make sure that there's no ambiguity to this policy, and that's why we're looking to institute this here. So that's the discussion. John, any other comments? We'll probably do signage. If the board wants to move forward with this, we'll do signage at the parks also.
And I would imagine it would get included when you got a recreational permit, right?
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, we have user groups, families, who book pavilions, picnic areas, ball fields, and we would distribute this along with their approved permit. So they would also have that. We can make it available at the recreation portion of the town's website. So it'll be there as well. So
I'd just like to also include any of the special events permits that we give out on outdoor properties, particularly town properties like clam bakes on the beach, et cetera, et cetera. I think this policy should extend to that as well.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
John, you're on that committee as well, so you wear
I
more
am.
than one hat.
Yes.
Yeah, just common sense, I think it's just, yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that the clarity is important, though, because I wouldn't know the exact time, and so I think having a policy we hand to people so everybody knows rules in real black and white way is helpful, so thank you for your work on this.
So this is just a policy, so it needs to be adopted by town board resolution, correct?
So I guess, let me just go back to, if you don't mind, what Kate said. So this specifically states for active town recreational facilities. For this policy, should we have a policy that mimics this, that the title will also then be for special events on town?
Public property.
On public properties also?
Yes.
That we can just mimic, like, we'll recirculate that to the special event committee?
Yep.
If they're comfortable with that, then too, we can adopt that into policy also then too, through resolution, is that?
I support
Okay.
that, David.
Okay, so when do you meet again?
Wednesday.
Tomorrow.
Well, hey, there you go, government at work. So let's, we'll get that ready to the committee tomorrow, John, Tom and Kate, and that maybe we'll do both of these, the upcoming resolution.
On March 20th.
Sure. So, any other comments, or just let John and myself know, we'll go from there.
It's common sense for safety.
Thank you, John.
Have a good day.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Okay, we're up to the liaison portion of the meeting. Tom?
Thank you very much, Madam Supervisor. Last night, the Amagansett Citizens Advisory Committee met. There was a great deal of discussion around the planning board's decision to deny the Bowler gas station in Amagansett.
Did they deny it, or they just?
Well, they had a vote that came out as a memorandum from the chair saying that how members voted on the application. The residents in the meeting itself were happy with that decision. Still great concern over Cranberry Hole Road. They just don't feel this is moving forward, and it's distressing to residents. Whether this is something that we need to have the MTA come out and do a work session, there just seems to be very little accountability for how they're moving forward with this, and so I honestly don't have the right answer to give them at this point. I know where we're at and what we've been told, but it does seem to be a lack of movement going on there. Better news, human services. Tuesday, March 11th, today, we began our first painting and drawing class. This is in conjunction with the East Hampton Town Arts Council. Teresa Lawler will be teaching the class today at 2 p.m. It will be in the activity room. Additionally, human services, really rather wonderful. The Knitting Club has been busy at work at the Senior Center, and they will be donating their products, hat, gloves, scarves, and blankets, to the retreat shelter. So that's good. And in conjunction with this, the retreat will be presenting a free workshop at the Senior Nutrition Program on Friday, March 28th, titled Partnering to Provide Safety and Support. Seniors will learn about the wide range of free confidential service of the retreat and how to recognize signs and dynamics of abusive relationships. We also, go back to, we did have a lot of discussion around the fire risk in Napeague. And one thing that did come up there was in the lanes. We talked about fire access as well. And I think it's just, one of those areas we might need to expand our outreach to residents. In some of those lanes, there's been encroachments into the road and fire trucks really cannot get down there. So it's getting that public education out there to those communities. The other point, just to bring up, David, was on Further Lane at the junction of Indian Wells. There's concerns about the safety there. There is a hedge on that corner that stops the visibility to the south, and also traffic goes fairly fast down that road. There was, consideration perhaps for a stop sign at that junction on Indian Wells itself as you're going south, just to kind of make some traffic safety improvements there, but just something for consideration.
I would say if have them send a letter recommendation to the town board or a request on there.
Great, thank you.
And the hedge itself, I believe that property is primed for redevelopment right now, and I think there is a section of the code that a hedge can only be at a certain height.
That is correct.
On a corner property.
Yep, and that's something we're going to have.
And as far as the lanes having the roads being encroached, that's code enforcement and fire marshal. I would have that. We could bring it up at the next public safety meeting.
Yep. Montauk wastewater, we will have a resolution on in the next meeting to reform that committee moving forward. Some residents have outreached me. It's going to be relatively small, the new committee, but anyone who is potentially interested, feel free to reach out to me. That's really it for my liaison update this week.
So, thank you very much, Thomas. Sorry, Madam Supervisor, I'll move on. I only have about 3 or 4 things here, mostly Montauk centric here then too. The only other one is not. The Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee is reviewing the RFA 1 for our calendar year 2025. The review is starting, and I anticipate doing a presentation to the town board from the chair sometime in April, just to let everyone know. I had a conversation and meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers last week to talk about a lot of projects on Long Island, but specifically asking about the Montauk overpasses that were to be removed. That is going to be pushed to post-summer because we don't want to be removing them during the summer season, so they'll let that bid out during the summer for a post-summer removal of those overpasses once they're engineered. I'll get more information to you. That was the first time I got a response from the Army Corps on that. I want to continue the discussion about the Montauk bottomlands on there. I know we went out to survey of those bottomlands. There's a couple situations that have arisen that I'll bring to the town board about ownership rights of those bottomlands and use of those bottomlands. Lastly, I know as we get ready for St. Patrick's Day and specifically the Montauk Parade, I want to thank the labor crew leader, Paul Colombo, and his crew, and Steve O'Brien for the upkeep of downtown Montauk right now. All the planter boxes and all the trees is looking wonderful down here. I want to thank that department for all their efforts in preparing for the masses that will descend upon Montauk upcoming. That's all. Thank you.
Beautiful. Kate? Yes, we already talked about the Ditch Dune project, that the full permit application has been submitted. And also we just gave an update on the grant. So I'll go to the Litter Action Committee met, and they have announced their event for No Fling Spring Litter Action Awareness, Don't Trash East Hampton. And this event will take place, is a beach cleanup at Maidstone Park and Springs. It's on March 22nd. It'll take place from 10 a.m. to noon. And if you have a group, any type of group, a group of neighbors or an environmental group, or we also have a great connection with the Sportsman Alliance now, who like to come out and do cleanups as they're concerned about litter as well. Please get in contact with my office, 631-324-2620, and I'll guide you to how you can get your group signed up to participate in the cleanups. And then I'll stop there.
Okay, on March 13th, this Thursday, there's going to be an Ag Advisory meeting at 5 p.m. at the Department of Land Management, which is, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact address. I wish Scott was still here. It's the building just west of Town Hall. On Town Hall campus there. They plan on discussing, I think, ag structures like they've been doing for a number of years, and that event is open to the public, so anybody who would like to show up, come there, or feel free to reach out to me for more clarity of where it'll be. On March 18th, there's the Springs CAC, that's next Tuesday, at 6 p.m. at Ashwag Hall. There is not an agenda yet, but I'll update you next week, but just if you want to put it on your calendar, that's 6 p.m. Next Tuesday at Ashwag Hall. Lastly, Springs Park, the test plot invasive species removal project will begin shortly. We don't have an exact date yet, but we have awarded the bid to a contractor. And I just want to remind the public, or let the public know, that the park will be closed during those times, as per Scott Wilson and Department of Land Management, for safety. The work will be during the middle of the day, so if you want to recreate, either by yourself or with your pet, I recommend going sort of early or later in the day. The project shouldn't take more than a few days. In the meantime, please feel free to reach out to me. I have heard a number of public comments on that project, some very helpful, some less so. But very open, as I've said previously, what we're trying to do is a test here to get rid of the invasives, but we want to do it, as Scott and I have talked about, with as light of a hand as possible. So somebody pointed out a few trees that might have been mismarked or the markers had been removed. Just want to reiterate to the public that it doesn't do anybody any good to remove markers because those are actually marking trees that should be saved. And so I think there's been some effort to sort of impede this project, and I think that actually will probably have counterproductive results, though we're going to be careful to double check everything and make sure that every tree that's not invasive that we can save, we do. And that's all I have.
Ian, once you know the schedule, when the contractor firm finalizes his schedule, let's get it to Patrick, and we'll put out alerts and we'll put it on social media.
And Scott Wilson is also working with Patrick and going to do what he can.
So obviously last Thursday, folks know we held the public hearing where we considered amending the gross floor area formula to 7% of lot size plus 1,500 square feet. We received robust public comment. We closed the record at the time of the hearing. So right now, the after hearing discussion has been tentatively scheduled for next Tuesday, March 18th, when we're back in town hall. And that's all I have for my liaison report. So now let's move on to resolutions. I guess, David, you're up first.
Yes, I'm happy to offer Resolution 2025-406. I will have to make one small amendment to it. This is the appointed maintenance mechanic 3, Michael Fressa, to the buildings and grounds, full-time position maintenance mechanic 3, and street lighting, hourly rate of $29.06, annual salary of $60,455.62. The effective date has to be amended to 3/24/25.
Second is amended.
All in favor?
Aye. 407 is approved supplemental grant funding for the Longhouse Reserve IA system. Longhouse was granted grant funding of $151,240 to the CPF Water Quality Round 2 of 2024. This is additional cost to relocate a potable water well serving the main house. And the amount to start $13,304.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. 408 is adopt local law amending Chapter 240 Vehicles and Traffic of the East Hampton Town Code, Section 27.2, paid parking. This public hearing was held last Thursday.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have Resolution 409, which is to appoint part-time natural resources employee Aaron Zilberman. And this is resolved that Aaron is appointed to part-time position of environmental aid at the hourly rate of $25.05. And this will be effective March 25th, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 410 is to authorize the energy manager agreement with New York Power Authority. This is where NYPA offers a web-based energy management platform, which can provide virtual audit to analyze data relating to energy costs, which when completed is expected to result in energy efficiency, recommendations resulting in energy savings opportunities. The town board believes it is in the best interest of the town to renew this agreement for another 2 years with New York Power Authority, and resolve that the supervisor is authorized to renew the agreement at a cost not to exceed $10,795.20.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 411 is to retain consultants for planning applications best practices, study. Whereas the Town of East Hampton Planning Department intends to update its procedures for reviewing site plan applications with the goal of making the process more efficient, consistent, and accessible for all stakeholders in the planning process. Whereas AKRF has expertise in the application review process through its service as a municipal planner for communities throughout New York State, and submitted a proposal to assist the planning department, where all recommendations would be done in strict alignment with the town's existing code and overall development goals and objectives. Be it resolved that the town board hereby retains AKRF to conduct the study, accordance with their proposal dated February 10th, not to exceed $15,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 412 is to retain AKRF FMP Group, LK McLean and Rayner Group for professional services. And this is to provide planning services, technical and engineering analysis related to review of the Wayne Scott Commercial Center subdivision and draft EIS for the project. And this is RFK has provided a proposal to the town with a not-to-exceed budget of $130,000. LK McLean has provided an updated proposal to the town for services through December 31st, 2025, in connection with the project of $34,150. And whereas Vincent Gordelio from Rayner Group has provided an updated proposal not to exceed $12,500, resolved that all invoices relating to services analysis from these three, from RFK, FMP, LK McLean, and Rayner for the project shall be paid from a particular budget line.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Resolution 413 is accept of a scenic and conservation easement at 22 Shore Road. And from 22 Shore Road LLC, this public hearing was held on March 6th. And the town hereby accepts the easement listed below, which is the grantor is 22 Shore Road LLC. It's a conservation and scenic easement. And the location is 22 Shore Road, Amagansett. The reviewing agency is the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Resolution 414 is approval of various special events for March 2025. And this is to approve the special events as agreed upon by the reviewing committee for the Amagansett Chamber of Commerce for the Amagansett Parade from the municipal lot to Indian Wells Highway on Saturday, March 22nd, noon to 12:10 p.m. The next event is the Friends of Erin Montauk St. Patrick's Day Parade, Edgemere Road to Montauk Highway, ending at Kirk Park, Sunday, March 30th, noon to 3 p.m., rain or shine. Next is the Clamshell Foundation 42nd Annual Fireworks Display, 3 Mile Harbor, East Hampton. This will take place on Saturday, July 12th, 9:30 p.m. to 9:45 p.m. The rain date is the next day. Next, lastly, the Clamshell Foundation 32nd Annual Clamshell Sandcastle Contest at Atlantic Beach on Saturday, August 9th, 2025, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. The setup is the day before. Setup is the same day at 8 a.m. The takedown is the same day at 4 p.m. They have a rain date, which is Sunday, August 10th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Resolution 415 is to release security in urban renewal parcel 75 in MN-2. And this is that the security, a report has been received from the town's consulting engineer about road work done. The town board request is made, but the town board returned security posted for said road work. Be it resolved that the town board is hereby release the security. The applicant was Brett Harris. It's care of Biondo and Hammer. And this is for a parcel on 21 South Eden Street in Montauk, and it's in the amount of $12,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Also, resolution 416 is to accept scenic easement urban renewal parcel 65 in EH-7. And this is, a hearing was held on March 6th for this, to accept this easement. Resolved that the town hereby accepts the easement listed below. The grantor is Joe Ryan and James C. Kushner, and it's located at 3 Hedges Avenue, East Hampton.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 417, this is to authorize payment of Camp Hero 2024 water bill. This is for an invoice in the amount of $752.86 for the energy consumption at the Madison Hill Drive pump station from December 28th to December 30th, actually there's a typo here. It's December 28th, 2024 to December 30th, 2024, I believe.
No.
Is it?
Might be an
No, I
annual
think
invoice, though.
it's a 2024 water bill, so it's going the end of the,
Okay,
2023,
so it'll be as written. The invoice is in the amount of $752.86 and that's for a period from December 28th, 2023 to December 30th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Resolution 2025-418 is to promote Frank Sokolowski to Detective Sergeant in the East Hampton Town Police Department at the annual salary of $178,822.58, effective retroactive to March 9th. And I'd just like to congratulate Detective Sergeant Sokolowski.
Second and second.
All in favor?
Aye.
419 is to amend Resolution 2024-1544, and this is to add Maureen Rakowski, the training fee for $195 for a total amount not to exceed $1,170.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And lastly, I have Resolution 420, which is a budget modification for the planning department, moving $176,650 from outside professional to outside professional Wayne Scott Commercial Center in the same amount.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that wraps up everything we've got on our desk for today. Do I have a motion to go into exec session?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to go into exec session for personnel, advice of counsel, and litigation.
Second.
Contracts and leases also. Sorry, CPF and leases also.
Really? CPF?
Yes.
Adding CPF and leases to my motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jason at LTV.
Thank you, guys.
So,